Call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. Sorry to start a little late. As you know, we moved this meeting up to 5 today because we've got an executive afterwards that could run late. But anyway, so we're here. Mike, the other members are on their way, as far as I'm aware. So. Anyway, so we are live. We are being recorded. Comments and statements from the public? Okay, seeing none. Informational agenda, superintendent's update.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick updates. As you're aware, on December 4th, so 2 weeks ago, we practiced a lockdown drill with the Westport police. The day after the lockdown drills, we actually debriefed with the administrative team. And I just want to share some of the highlights and some of the concerns that were raised during that debriefing. These are lessons learned along the way, and as several of you are aware, one of our officers in town has gone to the ALICE training, and so it is the hope that as we move forward and more of our police officers are trained in ALICE, that we'll be able to offer some professional development to our staff as well. So what is that? After Columbine, we practiced lockdowns, and we have gotten very, very good at stay put. But some of the lessons learned now is staying put may not always be the best choice. So actually fleeing or getting away, if you have time from the perpetrator or from the action, may actually be a better decision. But some training is involved as far as how do you know when it's time to flee. So the police have actually, in Westport, done a simulation over at the Montessori School, and we're looking at perhaps taking one of our August professional development days and purely focusing on emergency response drills with our staff. But with that said, a couple of the concerns here at the high school was a student was found in the hallway after lockdown. He was unable to hear the intercom in the bathroom, but knew enough to come out and get into the nearest classroom. We did find we have some issues with substitutes in a couple of our buildings. We were under the assumption that keys were going to be left behind because, particularly at the elementary school, they cannot lock the door from the interior, so they have to physically take the key and go outside to actually lock the door. And so we found a couple of the classrooms, they were unable to lock the door because there was no key left. So we have worked with Mrs. Staskowitz, and we understand that there is a key cabinet, and so we're going to make sure that when subs come into the building now, there'll be a procedure for them to leave their license, receive the key, and then at the end of the day, get their license back when we get the key. So we'll be able to tighten up procedures on that. We learned that a couple of adjoining doors throughout the district could not be locked, and so ultimately here at central office, we were able to walk into one office, and ultimately we were able to get over to the other side of the wall to the other 3, 4, and 5 offices that were there. But overall, and then at the Macomber School, students and parents were still entering the building. They had been a little bit later to school when the code red was announced, and they were actually unsure of where to go. So we learned, not only do we have to prepare staff and students, but also we need to perhaps do some kind of outreach and let parents know if you happen to be in the building, this is ultimately, our procedures and how to secure yourself as quickly as possible as well. Our teachers, our administrators did a wonderful job, and the students were phenomenal. You couldn't hear a peep in any of those buildings. So we're very, very proud of them, and we're very, very grateful to Officer Rob Reed and the members of the department who came and assisted with us. On another note, on Monday evening, the Board of Selectmen voted to allocate some of the cable fund money. There's about $400,000 or so in a revolving account, but the Department of Revenue recently came down to the town and said that we were going to only be able to spend 1% above the tax levy, which ultimately meant there would only be about $217,000 able to be spent. of which $107,000 of that money is the town operating expenses to run their video equipment, et cetera, and their staff. So the Board of Selectmen voted on Monday evening to grant the school department $55,000. And so some of that money will be to update the head-end equipment that will allow us to air more content. It'll replace some of our aging equipment, which Bob tells me is 10 years old and more. And we'll be able to provide access for student content to the cable community and web. So our student activities will be able to start recording concerts and things like that and finally get it back up and broadcast it. And then another $15,000 or so will roughly be to order equipment for student use and start the video clubs at the middle and the high school. This will include cameras, video editing, Apple Macintosh computers, and other miscellaneous stuff. The Villager, that's our high school newspaper, has requested video equipment, and I understand that both the elementary and the middle school are interested in equipment for the kids to be able to use that as well. While we were not able to, at this time, secure funding to have a cable advisor, tonight I am going to ask you to approve a job description, and it is hoped that at town meeting, when more monies are appropriated, we'll be able to go into phase 2, which will include the student advisor, as well as equipping either the media center here or the auditorium for broadcasting, so it won't take several hours to set up for many of our major meetings and whatnot. An update from the West. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but this year they started what was called a WIN block. That actually is an acronym. Of course, in education we have lots of acronyms, but it stands for What I Need. And we know that there are several youngsters that require additional services, and in the past they've had to miss something that goes on in the classroom to go out and receive those additional services. So each grade shuts down for a short block of time when targeted instruction is delivered both in ELA and in math. Students' progress gets continued to be monitored. Those students that are not out for any additional services are typically afforded some enrichment or more directed study or tutorials from their classroom teacher. So learning doesn't stop, it's just what type of learning occurs during that time. And so Mrs. Staskowitz has assured that as a result, just 4 months into the school year, we've been able to exit 1 first grade student, 6 second grade students, 4 third grade students, and 2 fourth grade students from receiving specialized tutorial services. So we're very, very proud of all the hard work going on there, and WIN certainly looks like it's been successful. Also, there's an after-school math enrichment for grade 4 over at the elementary school. Students who earned in grade 3 MCAS an advanced score or had an overall average of math 90 or above were invited to participate in a grade 4 math team using the Math Olympiad format. They received problems that were very challenging, but the students rose to the occasion and seemed to enjoy it. They worked on the challenging problems each week, and they compete monthly in an international competition that is with grades 4 through 6 students across the world. So very proud of their participation. As you are aware, unfortunately, the Westport Community Schools SOI, Statement of Interest, that were submitted last spring were not well received by the Mass School Building Authority. We have been encouraged to submit proposals again this coming year. And just as a reminder, and we will put it back on the agenda at the first of the year, but if we are thinking about putting in a project that's going to go through the accelerated repair program, which is primarily for repair or replacement of things like windows, roofs, or boilers, we will have to submit that SOI by Valentine's Day, by February 14th. And then if we're looking at any other submissions under the core program, and that would go beyond the scope of an accelerated repair. So that would be extensive renovations or additions, renovations, and or new school construction. We must submit the SOIs by April 11th. And again, we'll bring that before you after the first of the year, but just highlighting those dates at this point in time. And then finally, I'd just like to share with you that school will close at the end of the day on Friday. We hope that the students enjoy and the staff the holiday season, and will reopen again on Monday, January 6th. Our schools will be open on a limited basis, but central office will be open full-time. So if parents have any questions or concerns, and they're unable to reach anybody at the schools, they can certainly call us at central office. That's it.
Thanks, Michelle.
I just have one question and one comment, and I'll be brief because it's not really, I mean, it's on the agenda, but it's not really on the agenda, sort of. But on the keys for the subs at the West, is that something, are they going to be instructed to keep them on their person on like a...
Double keys.
I-
We're going to have a second set of keys, and what we're going to do is that second set of keys will be kept in the building. There's a substitute teacher, that if there's a teacher out, the sub will then give us their license. We will give them the room key. At the end of the day, they return the room key, we give them back their license.
Will they be instructed to say keep them on a lanyard around their neck?
They will be on the
Okay,
lanyard
so they're not
until
going
they
to like stick them on the desk so that somebody can
No,
either
they're
grab it, or they'll have it right with them like the
We're gonna
teachers
ask
do?
them to wear it. No,
Okay.
we'll ask them to have it around, just like most of the
Yep,
teachers wear them.
exactly.
We'll ask them, it'll be on the lanyard around their neck.
Okay, that was my concern. I just want to make sure they keep them on them. I think that's important that they actually have them on them. And I just want to comment on the wind block. Two comments to that. My son actually was telling Sarah the other day what wind block is and explaining it. And he doesn't have the tutorial stuff coming in, so he still knows what it is and what it's for. So kudos to even informing the students of what this is and what that time frame is. But I also wanted to add to what you said is the wind block also is a good opportunity to challenge the students that need that extra challenge, not just the students that need extra help, but you can also, those students weren't necessarily getting that opportunity to be challenged in a specific time frame during the day. And with that wind block, we can help the students that need the extra help, and also the students that are in the middle or maybe on the bubble, but also challenge the students on the other end of the spectrum that can maybe get a little bit more of a push. So I think it's a wonderful program for the students right across the board, and kudos on the great job that it sounds like it's doing down there.
So do I dare say it's a win-win?
It's a win-win.
Yeah, maybe 10 o'clock
All right.
tonight on.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all right, so let's move on to the action agenda, athletic handbooks. We got Mr. Pacheco and Mr. Camper here. Whoever wants, yeah, you guys want to come up? You guys can flip a coin.
I'll go first. Age before beauty, right? I'll be you first, right?
Okay, what do you got for us? We have the, is there anything you want to?
No, we have the middle school athletic handbook. It's pretty much similar to the high school handbook. I took out stuff that doesn't apply to the middle school, like junior varsity, varsity stuff. Added some stuff in that has to do with the middle school. It's pretty basic stuff. You know, you have to pass your classes. You have to be a good kid to be on a sports team. You have to pass physical education. It goes over the basics of what you need, physicals, all the paperwork, the user fees. In any situation, if you have a problem with a coach or anything like that, the procedure you go through, call the athletic director, if need be, call the principal in, have a meeting, and just what to do in most situations.
So this is something any student that participates in our sports reads and
Yeah, they have,
knowledges.
yep, before they play, they sign a letter saying, me and my parents both read the student athlete handbook. So
And
it's
this
on
is
the
something-
website, it's available.
And we've had this, but we just haven't, as a school committee, we haven't been approving
You
it.
haven't seen them before.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay.
I have a question. I don't even know, I haven't taken a look in the high school at that particular section, but for the athletic user fee section, you have listed the fee is $200 per participant per season. There is a family cap of $600 for the year, but there's also a per student cap.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just a family cap.
There is, yeah, we do have a per student cap. So I would like to at least make sure
Yeah,
that that
I
gets
did-
added
yeah.
in there.
Is the student cap what?
It's,
400?
4.
is it 400? It's
4 and
it's
6
two
for family?
seasons. It's 2 seasons, so there is also, there is an individual cap as well.
That's the first I'm hearing of it, so.
I
Yeah,
think that's what it kind of says, because it says the fee for the 2013 academic year is $200 per participant per season, which equals the cap of $400.
The cap is 600 for
It's
the
600.
family.
600 for a family.
But per individual, isn't it 200 per
it's
individual?
less per individual, so.
So if one
GQ
individual plays 3 sports, you don't have to pay for 2 of them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't have them, you know, in our pockets as to what the fees are. I don't know them all off the top of my head, I just get the bill for them, but,
I
when
mean,
it comes to,
one-
but,
just an idea on putting that in the actual handbook would be just to, you know, whatever the current fees are, and then when the fees change, you guys could just hand out a, you know, an appendix to the, as opposed to having to change the handbook or something.
but that I think needs to be changed, though.
Yeah, no, you guys,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like I said, that's the first I'm hearing of it, so I can
Yeah,
definitely
there
go and
is an
change it.
individual cap, and I remember that we did that specifically more leaning at the high school to sort of hopefully edge some of the participation of those kids that maybe want to play but just can't afford that third season. So we're trying to help out not just the families of multiple kids, but also the individual kids that do play that third sport. And if I'm correct me, Jason, is tiered too, is it not? First sport, second sport, and then third sport is free.
Correct.
So it's even a tiered, so the first sport is 200, the second one I think is
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
it's
No,
not correct.
No,
We talked about tiering it.
no, it's 200 per
It is
sport.
200
So
and
it's
then
2
with a
for the fall,
400
2
cap.
for the winter. So if you're an individual, you know, one person in the family playing sports, then. if they
But a
play in
400
the-
cap.
Yes.
So if we can just add that
Yeah,
in
no
there.
problem.
Okay.
So then if someone plays 2 sports during one season, can they do that? Are they able to?
You can only
give
play
it?
one at a time.
So how many, and there's 2 seasons, it's 1, 2?
3.
There's 3. Okay.
So if we do 3, you only gonna pay
Then
for
it
2.
would, I understand now. I see where, I was thinking that they could do it in the same season and that, so never mind. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Scratch
I
what I
mean,
said.
if you have 2 kids that are playing,
That makes
then
sense.
by the second season, you get one of those, you're basically free for the rest of the year,
Yeah.
for one of those kids,
Yeah,
for both
that's-
those kids, actually.
I see.
But yeah, if we can just add the
Yeah.
per
No problem.
in there, just so that people know it's out there.
Jason?
I believe it's accurate in mine. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I'll look at it.
But I believe I changed it at the beginning of the year, and I am under the assumption that it's 400 cap for an individual student athlete and then 600 for the family. So I already have some individuals now that have played in the fall and winter that will be free for the spring, and also some families that have already reached the $600 cap. So some of them are already free right now in the fall, and if they play in the spring, they'll be free as well. So I've been tracking that and taking care of it. But I also got a question from a parent at a recent game, because nowhere in the policy that I could see did it say anything about the 2 schools combined, or the district. So I told her I told the parent I would get back to them about it, but with 2 separate athletic directors, I have no idea who plays sports at the middle school. And
Yeah, somebody got brought
and
up
also,
some
you know,
this week
family,
somewhere.
you know, a lot of times families with, you know, maybe brother and sister with different names, and
Oh, I see, so if you
Unless
have a
it's brought
child
up
down
by a
there and a
family.
child up
Yeah.
here, oh,
unless it's brought up by a family, neither one of us
you
would
wouldn't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah, I don't
don't
think
see it
we've-
in your handbook, the 600 or the, I am looking at it.
Might be in
The
different
fee,
place.
unless it's IC athletic user fee, the fee for the athletic academic year is 200
Page are you on,
per
Michelle?
participant per student, page 7 per season. But I don't see the cap on here. I don't see the family cap listed on here either.
But I see.
My only other, did yours mention the waiver?
Yeah.
It did, okay. There's so many,
Yeah, there's a way over here.
My cap, excuse me, the transportation is a family cap across the schools. So I think that's kind of what Jason's saying, like if a child is at a big.
yeah, exactly.
We do across, like I.
Well, and they should do it for sports too, I would think,
But
across schools,
the tough part is
knowing.
right, because, you know, I know that Michelle does all of the schools, and she does all the transportation with the middle school and high school being separate. You know, I have no idea whose younger brother or younger sister plays at the middle school.
Well, when the kids sign up, they're obviously filling out something, so on that form, you know, do you have a child in another school? You know, that, and then,
Mhm.
you know, obviously we could just, that would be an easy check. All right,
I'd make a
other
motion to approve both of them with the adjustments.
the fee
Of the
adjustment,
fee.
user fee,
I second that, but for discussion.
discussion?
Would we want to say something in there in regards to it being across the board so that people are aware that if they have a student in the middle school and a couple, whatever that is, that it's for all sports?
Let's change the policy, right? Is that?
Is that a policy change, or is it just an
Fees on the
explanation?
policy.
I think the fees, I think when we create the fees in policy, we create the fees for the district. We aren't creating fees just for Westport High School, we're creating the fees for transportation, we're creating the fees for sports. So my assumption when we
just to
created
clarify.
those fees was that we were creating
Across the
them
board,
for middle
okay.
school and high school, and if we had a program for elementary school, which we don't like this as well. So therefore, my thought would be that they would cross over from school
I
to
mean,
school.
Jason, I'm assuming at some point you would get, or you'd have a child or parents say, oh, I don't need, you know, I've already paid my 2 at the middle school or
Right,
whatever.
which is what happened.
But it hasn't happened, so this is the first time that?
This is the first time it's
Okay.
Well, but
happened right
also,
now.
we just initiated that family cap, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't have necessarily had this question coming at you
Okay.
either.
All right.
We just had that flat fee, and parents are now starting to make sure it's out there.
Is it difficult to add something to the form or something?
No, I would have to, you know, I'll just have to go back.
Are we gonna try to do this for the spring season, or are we talking about for next year? So change the forms like right now, and then for the spring season, if people are like, well, I
I
have.
would think this needs to be
Yeah,
done
for the
immediately.
next,
I mean, maybe
the next round of, the next season.
if a parent brings it to your attention,
To
then
make the
then
adjustment.
I would imagine we would make the adjustment, but, yeah.
The next round of forms that goes out.
I mean, we could certainly put something on the website and notify, you know, just let parents.
Believe me, if parents know that they are, don't have to pay as much money, they'll be knocking on your door, calling you, guaranteed, so.
Well, for winter sports, they're supposed to read and sign the handbook, so if they don't know it, they should be, you know,
Oh, that's a good point.
reading it anyway, too.
Right, so.
Right, so maybe we need to make a one-page change type of thing,
Sure.
an
Yeah.
amendment for now, just
Yeah, we can talk about
fees.
that.
And I think too, the coaches, I mean, you can also make notes to the coaches and just let the coaches know, hey, let your kids know that, you know, the fee structure goes across the board. So if there is, you know, family cap, it's whole district. I mean, you know, we don't wanna hurt these families that want their kids to participate. That's why we did that, I
Yep.
think, so.
Okay, so.
And I know at least one child up here that is playing basketball because she was free. Because she's got 2 other siblings, so
Okay.
we know that works.
Just off the subject, what's our final numbers on the girls' basketball sign-up?
20.
Wow.
Great
So
job.
we do have 2 teams.
Good.
10 and 10, varsity and junior.
All right, so we got a motion and a second to approve the athletic handbooks for the high and the middle school. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Can we table the next one until everybody gets here? I don't
Yeah,
think
would
that that's
be the-
something that we
yeah.
can be discussing, and
Yeah, we'll pass it over. Yeah.
I don't know that we should do the next one either. You think?
No, it's
Where are we at?
transportation. Yeah,
Oh, never mind,
transportation.
it's you. We can deal with you.
All right, so we'll pass over actions needed for the new fingerprint law, and we'll move on to transportation food service enrollment update by Ms. Reposa.
Okay. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of an update that, starting with transportation, we're going to be going out to bid in January, just so that way we can get an idea of what the upcoming budget will be for the upcoming school year. So we're going to try to go out earlier than normal, which is probably about a couple of months earlier than we usually go out. But I think it would be good just so that we can see where our budget's going. We were at 19 buses in 2009, and we're down to 15 buses right now, which obviously that goes with the enrollment as well. So if the enrollment's higher, then we would need more buses. Right now, we have a majority of our high school and middle school students in the morning. We have a good majority of them that are driven in every single morning, but then they do ride the bus home at the end of the day. Mac and West, we have about 30% of our students are transported to and from school by parents, which is by their choice. I did a survey a couple of months ago in October to find out, why students are being transported by the parents. What is it that, why is it that you want to transport your students in? And it mainly became the issue because of the parent pickup situation that was going on at the elementary school. So the majority of the things were that parents think that it's ridiculous that their students are riding on the bus for 30 minutes every day. Some of the parents, the children live 2 miles within the school district, and yet they still have to ride 20 to 30 minutes to go home. And then the other issue was that they feel that the students are not safe on the school bus. So, I did that so that I could look at building my routes, how I could best help that situation. The problem with doing that is I tried to keep it so that there was a lot of right side pickup and drop off so that the students weren't crossing on certain areas. So a lot of the parents that have had the complaint about their students that live 2 or 3 miles away and their children are coming home later is because the streets that they're on are busier streets that the bus might have to go down further to come back to be able to do the right side drop off or the right side pickup. So they might be riding a shorter period of time in the morning, but then going home, they're riding longer going home. So it's really hard. You can't please everybody when it comes to that piece of it, and we're in a small town where a lot of our main roads are traveled by all of the school buses. So I've looked into it. I'm trying to see if I can make a few more adjustments with the upcoming school year with routes, and it will depend on the enrollment to see whether or not I can make big changes, but I can't really see that I can make too many changes when it comes to what I already existingly have going on. We were able to save on another bus this school year, so that was a savings of $67,800 over the last 2 years, per each bus route. I did take out of the transportation budget $950 to help with the relining of the safety lines down at the elementary school to see if that would help a little bit with crosswalks and parents at least being able to visibly see where they should be crossing and for the buses as well. The other thing that I did check into was bus monitors. I know it's something that Michelle has spoken about in the past to try to look into, getting a cost of what bus monitors would be. Right now, the hourly rate is $38 an hour. So the bus monitors, that is just, I think our school district right now does a great job with handling the behaviors. If we have behaviors issues on the buses, the principals, the assistant principals work very closely with me and the drivers to try to make sure that we avoid any type of issues that are happening that would cause safety issues for the drivers or even the other students on the school buses. So I have a different opinion of how I think I would like to see that handled, where we would come up with a different classification on, under the union, where we would basically have that person who we get to dictate what buses they ride depending on whatever issues, but yet still be able to use that person within the district. So, and I think it would be a lot, it would be 1/3 of the savings to be able to be in control of having that person. So right now, I don't foresee it. We've used a monitor for about a month at the elementary school. We pulled the person off once we knew that the situation was handled, the student was on a behavior plan, and we tried to take care of that within 30 days. So, and that person actually rode for longer than what we probably anticipated.
Michelle, just
Yes.
to clarify, that $38 figure is what the bus company would charge us.
Correct.
If we had them supply the monitors.
Correct. Revenue as far as from the transportation fees that we're receiving currently right now, we're charging for grades 7 and 8, we charge $175 for the school year. For grades 9 through 12, we charge $200 for the school year. The waivers are offered to any of the students that qualify for free or reduced lunch, and they have to go through the waiver process of providing documentation that, they follow all the documentation that's needed to be qualified for the free and reduced. The revenue that was taken in from 2011, 2012, we took in $25,000, and that was when we were charging $150 per year for busing and not charging grade 7 and 8. This current year, right here, we brought in $47,810, and that was the decrease of trying to give the parents a little bit of a break and saving $25 per year and putting the cap on. So, as far as it was about a $20,000 loss in revenue, but at the same time, it did give back. I think a lot of the parents felt a little bit of the relief knowing that, the school committee approved to have the prices decreased a little bit. So I think a lot of the parents appreciated that. As far as the ridership goes, we maybe saw a 10% decrease over the last 2 years. I still have about 61% of our students riding, which is about 900 students, and we have current enrollment at about 1,628. So 61% is still quite a bit of a high enrollment ridership for the amount of students that we have. So that's my transportation overview.
Not that, our students are, I think, relatively good on our buses, and not to harp on having a monitor or whatnot, but when you are a bus driver and we're eliminating routes and we're making the buses fuller, I know as a parent, you got a couple of kids in the back and you're trying to drive and it's icy or chaotic or whatever, there's a lot of cars on the road, it's very difficult when you've got kids acting up. And I wonder if I like what you suggested is having at least somebody that you can put on a bus when you feel a need, or if there's some things going on that you need that person, because the poor bus drivers shouldn't have to deal with some of the things going on with those buses and have to drive, and they're responsible to keep our children safe. If when we go through the contract negotiations, is that an opportunity to throw something out there like this to the bus companies, or no?
I believe so, but I think you can ask at some point to add a classification on. It doesn't have to be, I think it could be during the contract, any contract year as well.
I think you're talking about our in-house contract. We can actually put that as a stipulation
Oh,
in our
correct, yes.
bid too as well.
That was something I was including in this bid that's going out, is that
Okay.
we have the opportunity to put on our own bus monitors at any point in time during the school contract.
Okay.
So that is something I do have
Okay, so
being put
we
into
will
this
address
bid.
that as
Yes.
we move forward to make sure that we have that opportunity, if you feel the need arises or
Right.
whatever. Yeah, and I think too, sometimes, having, it's sort of like having that monitor that pops on and off keeps the kids on their toes a little bit too. They never know when that person's gonna come on and spend the day with them, and,
Right.
so, and it also, I think, gives the bus drivers somebody to go to and say, because I know my son's bus driver a couple times has said to me, look, I don't want to have to write these kids up, but they need to be quiet. They need to sit in their seats. And, they're not bad kids. They're on the bus for a while and they're antsy. And sometimes just having that extra person to remind them a couple more times, sit down, be quiet, behave, and then the bus driver doesn't have to deal with it. So, I think it'll at least give you
Right, yeah, no, I agree.
something.
And I agree having just one of our own that can get on the bus once in a while to, observe what's going on, or if you have an issue that's happening, or just knowing that you have somebody there that can do that.
Also, too, if you have a certain spot that may be a little more dangerous at certain times of the day or
Right,
whatnot,
you have somebody that can watch
can
it, you
get
can
out
keep an
and-
eye on it and make sure when they're getting on and off the bus. So you have them not just for behaviors, or if issues happen, you have them to be able to help monitor the kids getting on and off the bus, which, that's a great help as well.
Right. And I think it's a great idea, but.
Michelle, you mentioned in that survey, some of the parents were their concerns with safety. And I guess I imagine they didn't mean safety with the buses, but the child.
I think
Student
some of the
issues.
parents they don't like the idea of the child riding the bus. They feel better with the child riding with them. That was the interpretation that from doing the survey and speaking to the parents outside, and, I tried to talk to many of them when I was taking back the surveys or when I was handing out the surveys. I was asking, I'm here for your opinion, because a lot of, some people weren't happy to even take the survey and, weren't quite pleasant about it. And I said, I'm out here for suggestions. Whatever best way we can provide the students to get to and back and forth from school safely, but also to help avoid the congestion that's going on in the elementary school with parent pickup is also a safety issue as well. So, I said, suggestions are taken, and we'll do what we can with them to make it a little more feasible for everyone. And safe.
I know you hear from parents, I hear from parents, oh, I don't want my middle schooler on the bus with the high schoolers. And I tell them, rarely is there ever, the issue's ever high schoolers.
No,
The
high
issue's
school
usually in the
students,
younger
they
grade.
mind their own business. It's the elementary school.
It's always the younger, yeah.
The
I
young
try to-
ones. Well, they just, they're wide up. It's been a long day. It's stressful. And the morning, they're all tired. The afternoon going home
Yeah.
is when they're all jumping out of their skin. They're ready to run. They want to get out. They want to move around. And, they don't get the physical activity that they got years ago.
exactly
I mean, they maybe are outside, 15 minutes if they're lucky, 20 minutes. So,
If there's no snow.
and, and that's good weather. So, I mean, they're going home.
My ninth grader only has 2 high school kids on her bus.
Yeah, they don't,
It's
the
all
high
middle
school
school
students,
kids.
I very seldom receive any complaints over middle school and high school students.
No, they're too cool for
Yeah,
messing
they
around
don't-
with the younger kids. All right. All right, Michelle, anything else, anyone?
I have
Let's
food
just have
service
food.
now.
Oh, food service, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have some questions about food.
I'm looking at Chris over there.
Okay.
Trying to get her.
So food service, the last 30 days, we've had a little bit of some mechanical breakdowns and some power outages and different things that have gone on, and we've tried our best to try to save everything we could, and there's been a lot of talk of chicken, that people have eaten a lot of chicken. It's good chicken, though. It's not government chicken. It's good chicken, though. We had a couple of power outages that have happened on a weekend where the elementary school and the middle school, the power went out, and when the power came back on, the freezers did not turn back on, and what happened was Mike Duat has an alarm that goes off, and it either goes to his phone or to his computer. For some reason, the alarm did not go to his phone. So I received a call on a Sunday at about 12 o'clock one day that there was a problem, that our freezers at the middle school had turned to 40-degree temperatures, which was not good. So we were able to go down and move everything over to the other freezer there, got everything over there. The next day, I had all the managers meet at the middle school so that we could take everything, had changed everyone's menus for the week so that we did not have all of that loss, that we could try to recoup some of it and try to have everybody a little more creative of their menu for chicken. And we were able to get through it with we probably lost about $1,500 worth of product, where there was probably about $12,000 of product in there. So we were able to save it. Mike did take care of the problem to get the alarm squared away. And the weekend before that, the elementary school had a problem with their cooler, where we lost probably about 200 milks. It was the refrigerator. Lucky enough, they don't keep a lot in their cooler other than milk, cheese, and we were able to catch that during a school day, so we were able to move that, and we only lost maybe a couple of $100 there. But some of our equipment has been starting to slowly wear, that I found this past year. I have an oven right now that's down that needs about $1,300 worth of work because you can no longer get the part. It's a motor on it, so that I would just receive the bill for that today. I have a steamer that went down at the elementary school that they were able to fix that for a couple of $100. And a lot of these, the equipment that we do have, I have them coming in the winter. I have them coming in during school vacations. They calibrate everything, they check everything, make sure it's running properly, they check the fans on everything. But slowly but surely, some of these items are going down. I know that here in this packet, you'll see that there is a list of equipment that Dr. Doggin had asked me to put together by school over some of the items that I'm concerned about that will need to be repaired probably within the next couple of years. The middle school is a large one. It's $104,000, the total of equipment that could stand to be used there. The elementary school, the oven that they have that is currently down right now, I can get a replacement for like $5,500. To repair it is $1,300.
That one's the reason for
The-
the chicken chunks today?
No, the chicken, yes,
Oh.
that's exactly,
Okay.
that's the reason for the chicken chunks today, was
Can we-
because the
chicken
elementary
chunks.
school.
Tell people what chicken chunks are.
Chicken chunks are it's just a different name. It's chunks of chicken, breaded chicken.
They're breaded chicken.
But
It
it's
looks like a
all
big
white
hunk,
meat.
right? Yeah.
It's all white meat. It's good chicken, but
It actually looks very good.
it
I
is,
have to
it's
say.
the high school students love it. They hated the high school people hated that we
I've
moved it
heard
to the
more comments
elementary
about the
school.
chicken chunks.
Because they toss them in
But
hot
that's
sauce
this-
at the
that's
high
this
school. And
oven?
that was because
today?
of the oven and our steamer. The oven and steamer went down yesterday afternoon. They turned it on, and the water just came from underneath. So we had to do a quick change of menu in order to be able to change the menu for today. So some of these items, like I talk about with the concern, my middle school, obviously I'm very concerned about all the time because they have a large unit that's their steamer, oven, and kettles that are all connected. It's one big old unit that's been there for over 30 years.
Is that on here?
That's on here.
Which one is it?
You have to replace it individually now because they no longer have the
Oh.
one large unit. So everything would need to be pulled out. The unit would have to be replaced by ovens, steamer, kettle individually, probably be, the electricity would have to be, and plumbing would all need to be re-gutted out because it is so old, but it's something that if you put in at any time and you decided to close that building or something was to happen, the warranty on that is gone. And probably to replace that entire unit individually was probably close to like $80,000 for that whole section. Lucky enough, knock on wood right now, I have minor issues going on there. I won't speak too much about that because I don't want to jinx myself. High school, I always have a steamer that gives me a little bit of issue. High school, I have doors on the ovens. They no longer even make the pots for those doors. They don't make those ovens any longer. So right now, lucky enough, the maintenance department has been coming in and they've been doing some little welding for me to weld the doors to make sure that they're working properly. So, you know, right, we're holding our own, but slowly but surely it's getting worse with the amount of repairs, and then the repairs are becoming so costly that, you know, is it worth spending $1,300 on an oven when you buy a brand new one for $5,500?
So
You know.
on this sheet where it said like the 30 years, that's how old they're
Right,
older than
30 years plus. Most of them are probably about 38 years old. The elementary school, everything, I was down there today, and everything at the elementary school is at least 35 years plus older. The manager down there has worked for 29 years at that school, and everything was there when she started, so I know that is. So, I mean, right now, the revenue, as far as, I mean, school lunch, by increasing the price of lunches a little bit, did help to bring our revenue up a little bit. We were at about 45,000 at the end of last year, and with increasing the school lunch prices this year, we hopefully will end up at about 65,000 at the end of this year, which, you know, you need to have that little bit of a cushion, because if we do have anything break, or if anything needs to be replaced, it has to come out of the school lunch revenue. So right now that we're kind of basically holding our own. The Macumber School is another one. I you know, don't like to bring up the Macumber that often because I know we've talked about this in the past a couple of years ago. Right now it costs money to serve lunch at the Macumber School. We lose about $17,000 a year by serving school lunch at the Macumber School. Not because of equipment, because the amount of students that purchase lunch at the Macumber School does not cover the cost of the labor there. It basically just covers the cost of the food. And I've looked into the fact of transporting food back and forth. It's another cost. It's probably about an $80,000 cost to be able to buy a van that can house the warming units, that you can cook the food at a different school. You still need the same amount of staff, so the food needs to be transported from a different school properly in the right type of vehicle, the right type of units, has to be brought to that school, and then it has to be served. So you don't save money by having one less staff. You still need the staff, but it also, you have an initiatives cost that you need to, with a van, the equipment, to be able to transport it. So I know it's one of those things we always talk about. We don't want to take away hot food or the hot meals from the Macomb School, nor do I. I just like to bring it up so that everybody's aware that it does cost us money to serve lunch at that school. And with the enrollment being down, we were serving at about 70 to 90 students a day for school lunch. For this school year so far, we're only serving on an average of 55 school lunches. And that's offering it to preschool students as well. So an enrollment this year for Macomb School is about the same as it was last year. Maybe we're down like 10 students. So there is about a 25 to 30 meals served less this year than last year. So that's just something to throw out to you.
Are we required down there?
I'm sorry?
Are we required down there for K?
I don't believe we're required. I believe we could serve cold lunches. I think for free and reduced, you have to provide lunch, but we could provide a bag lunch. I think it's just something we've always tried to stay away from, that we try to provide it for,
Of course.
you know, all students. And so that is a little bit on my school lunch piece of it. Any questions? Oh. The free and reduced percentages were 19%. 19% of our students were on free and reduced in 2009. We're at 27% now for free and reduced. So it has increased. It still has not increased enough to really apply for many grants. We have to be at 50%. So right now, I mean, we're moving up there. I offer it to everyone. It's on all my paperwork. It's on the website. I put it out to parents that call up. Students that owe lunch balances, I reach out to them to let them know that, please fill out the free and reduce. That's what it's there for. Take advantage of it. It's private. Other students don't know what students are on free and reduced. It's all generated through their student ID number, so it is something that we still reach out to everyone for on a regular basis, not just at the beginning of the year. As far as enrollment goes, I just received the census back from the town, and Dr. Doggin had asked me to put together a 5-year forecast for enrollment, so we're currently working on that right now, and that will be, I guess, on the table to discuss sometime in January. And both the enrollment for October and November are here for the last 2 months. We are still down about 60 students from the previous year. Most of it does seem to be through the high school. I've kind of, I've been looking at the census from the town, and when you look at the students that are going to other schools, private paid schools, that has come down a little bit. I don't see that those numbers have increased. Like, even though our enrollment for high school has come down, when you look at the private pay, it doesn't, their enrollment has come down a little bit. So as far as where these students are all going, it's very hard on my end. I only handle a small piece of the enrollment to know where everyone's going. I do keep track of like the Diamond and the Bristol Aggie. Again, that is something that the town, the town pays to send those students to a vocational school. So, it's still, they're still our students when it comes to that. They have taken maybe an extra 5 to 10 students more than in the past, but it still is not enough to count for 60 students each year.
That's per grade level though, right? Is that per grade level?
No, I think, well, that's per each entering grade. So like,
Yeah,
at one
so-
point in time, they only would take, say, 15, where now Diamond might take, say, 23 students or 22 students going in. So you're only talking 7 students that are leaving the middle school, going to the going to, say, Diamond. So we're losing 7 students that would have normally come to our 9th grade.
That times 2 years, correct? That was 2 years ago that they did that?
I
So
think
14?
I think this past year it was 22 students or 23 students. Previous year, I think, was like 20 students. And prior to that, I want to say it was like 17.
Yeah, Michelle, I was looking at that list that you,
This one?
the census, the one you had, the parochial enrollments over the last 10 years. and-
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of the thinking out there is that these kids are moving out in droves, and we're losing them all to the
Right.
school up the road there. And yes, when you look at their enrollment, it's the same, if not a little lower than it was 10 years ago. Well, back in
Right,
07, I think.
right.
we
When you look at it, wasn't like 2005. 2005, it was 445 students that were going out to private parochial schools. Right now, we're at 413. And in that, over the last 7 years, it's actually come down, and this year it's maybe gone up 20 students, but we're still lower than what we were by 30 students 7 years ago. And just, briefly saying, looking at the census, one of the things I spoke to Ann about, Dr. Doggin about, when we were looking at it, we don't have a lot of new developments right now. So it's not like we have these brand new developments like we had like 7 years ago. 7 years ago, we had a lot of new developments that came in, a lot of students. They were in preschool, kindergarten, they've moved up the ladder. But since then, we really have not had this huge development rise going on right now. A lot of a lot of the areas have already developed, and they are what they are. So I can't see the enrollment going up at this point. I mean, unless even with the new development that it's in Westport. I mean, I think they're talking, and I don't know for sure, maybe 65 houses. I'm not positive how many houses are going in there, but even then, so you're still talking that 5-6 years away before you start to see what type of families, what the family count is in those households. What controls that? I think Westport has been doing a great job the last couple of months trying to get, I was at the elementary school listening to some of the parents there, how they're looking forward to another night over here at high school to see what high school has to offer. I think when you compare to, my son's at high school here, and, I think we have a great high school. I think you can't always count on it that people are sent out to private pay because they don't like Westport. I don't think that's the case.
Just one piece of food for thought too. I know several of us are Westport graduates, and I know my graduating class was actually only 118. So, and yours mustn't have been
Similar.
much off.
Mine.
So the graduating classes currently aren't far off from where they were
Right.
when we were here, and probably when you were here too. So, I don't see a huge difference or change. I think it's just a mindset, that Westport is what it is, and, I think people just need to open their minds because we have a very good high school.
Right.
So
I agree too. I think there really was just, at one point in time, it was that new development, all those new developments that
influx.
happened to come in, and it happened that our enrollment was really high at that point. So now we're looking at those numbers saying, where did all
Right,
of our
dropping
students
back.
go? And I don't think that's the case. I think it was just at that point in time, we had the developments that were there with the homes, with the families, and at this point in time, we don't have that. So
Right.
therefore, your enrollment is going to decrease. And unfortunately, it's going to carry through the, the school term of those students going through, the schools.
Interesting.
All right, thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, guys, we've been joined by Michael, Mr. Sullivan here. But listen, I want to go ahead and jump to D, approval of reimbursement of the West Media chairs. I know Ms. Stastowitz is here for that, so I want to get her out of here. And just
in a nice way.
and just an FYI, I need to recuse myself from this conversation. Happen to be related to the person who works there. Michelle, you want
Good
to
evening.
So can you, I know I'll open up the conversation because I was actually the one who questioned this initially on the bill warrant when I came in to sign because it was missing, the purchase order was sort of out of line from everything. I was concerned because the purchase was made before the purchase order was even, and then the purchase order was created. And it's unfortunate that we don't have a couple of people that were involved in the chain.
Exactly.
Because even including the superintendent, because I had questioned why the superintendent had even signed the purchase order, because I don't think that he should have even signed it, personally. But that's just my opinion because of the way that it was done. So I don't know if you want to explain what happened and.
I can explain a little bit. The way that it all happened is that we obviously did need to replace the media center chairs. The chairs that were being used at the computers were really old desk chairs that were not adjustable. The overall feeling between Mr. Gastall, the former principal, and Elizabeth Lewis, the former technology director, were that they needed to get adjustable chairs so that they would be able to adjust them depending on what grade of the children were in there. Susan Viveris was the one that had a conversation with Beth Lewis and Tom Gastall, and it was asked Mrs. Lewis where the money should come from, and there was money in the media center budget, the West Media Center budget. Susan asked if that money could be used for furniture, and the answer was yes. So they felt, and as I said, the technology department really felt that the chairs should be adjustable. So Mrs. Lewis emailed a couple of chairs that she found at Staples, a couple of ads that she found at Staples, and she thought would be good. Mrs. Viveris went to see the chairs, but she didn't feel as though they were very good quality. They would probably not last very long. But she did find some others that were better quality, but they were on sale. The first day of school, which was actually convocation, I happened to actually be with Mrs. Viveris, and we happened to run into Melissa Souza, who is the from the business department. And we both asked, what's the story on the media center chairs, and can we go ahead and purchase them? And Melissa said, yes, I don't think that that's a problem. Where is the money coming from? We both said, from the media center budget, there's enough money in there to cover it. So we went ahead, she said yes. I think the only difference was that both of us, because we're both fairly new to administration, we both had no idea that what we should have done is, when she said to purchase the chairs, what we really should have done is had it go through a purchase order, and we didn't. But the chairs, it was an agreement with Tom Gastall, Beth Lewis, Mrs. Viveris, that the chairs would be purchased, and when we asked Melissa, she said, yes, go ahead and purchase them. And Mrs. Viveris did ask Melissa if she could go ahead and purchase them and put them on her credit card, and Melissa said yes.
Dr. Dargan, can you explain the process that typically happens?
In the past, there have been occasions where a purchase had been made and then reimbursement had been submitted. So not always in the past was a purchase order generated before a purchase. I'll give you an example. As assistant superintendent, I would do some after school curriculum work with teachers, not knowing how many teachers would actually come out to the meeting. A bill payment form then would be signed by the teachers, and then we would take the bill payment forms, go back and then generate the purchase order for payment for the teachers, the $30 an hour that they receive for attending any after-school curriculum work. Then probably about mid-September or so, we received a memo that said the procedure and process was changing and that no reimbursement would be made, that a purchase order must be generated with prior approval. So at that point in time, as assistant superintendent, I had to guesstimate how many people might be coming out to attend an after-school session. We would generate a purchase order and then ultimately have to either add or subtract to that. So prior to about mid-September or so, yes, there had been at times practice of purchase or work done before a PO, but not since mid-September.
Not since then. But this was actually back in August.
Melissa. Has Mrs. Viveris been reimbursed for this expense?
Not that I'm aware of.
Can I make a motion while I ask a comment too? Sure. I'd like to make a motion to pay this invoice, $1,039.74, for reimbursement of the chairs that was already given approval to purchase. We're utilizing the chairs.
Mhm.
She needs her money. We need to pay her. So I make a motion to pay her.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion on the motion. Melissa, do you want to start? Since you made the motion.
Oh, sure. Well, it sounds as though she was given permission.
Mhm.
This seems to have been, unfortunately, something that has happened in the past. I think we've heard of other issues that have came before us of payments that weren't made on a timely manner. I don't want to look back. Let's move forward. We have regulations in place. This should not happen. However, it did.
Mhm.
This individual took it upon herself to find chairs at a reasonable cost for our students. I'm glad my daughter has a chair to sit in.
That's comfortable.
That's comfortable. I think at this point, we just need to pay it and say thank you for making the effort to go get the chairs.
Any other discussion? Michael?
Yeah, I just, as I'm looking at this, and I saw it in the pack this week, it appears to have all the necessary signatures. We have had a conversation in the past when it comes time to sign bill warrants on the procedure. There were some improvements made on the procurement and purchase order system in the past few months. So this looks as though it meets that level of checks and balances, so I support going ahead and making the reimbursement.
I just have a couple of questions, and I apologize, I walked in late, and if I'm being repetitive, it's because I wasn't here to hear it. My question is, does this pass an audit? If we approve this and we were audited, would this pass muster with an audit?
It may be questioned, but this had been common practice prior to this school year anyway, and it hadn't been put into an audit report. But we have since corrected it anyway, and that's what's much more important.
In these amounts for goods, I'm not talking about for salaries or for people doing work and then being processed afterwards. I'm talking about for purchasing articles in this amount and over $1,000? That was common practice?
I'm not familiar enough to say the dollar amounts, but it was common practice to go out and spend and then submit for reimbursement. So for instance, if you needed something that was consumable, you were going to now all of a sudden do a baking class, you needed to go to Stop and Shop and make a purchase, etc., you could do that and submit for reimbursement. Now we have a Walmart card, there's a PO that's generated, money is put on the card, so there is more, very similar to what was recommended through MASBO, the P cards. There's a checks and balances system, so I can't attest to what the dollar amount was, but I can tell you that past practice has been you could go out and spend, I know of at least a couple of $100s. I can't speak for certain the exact dollar amounts.
And what is our business manager's position with regard to this transaction?
We're doing a written procedural manual to ensure that, we do have a staff handbook, and in the staff handbook, they're reminded that you have to get permission before you spend money. And that was a new addition to it. So again, we'll have a business office procedural manual that's generated to ensure that this does not happen again.
So you're representing that this was common practice, that somebody could go out and purchase $1,000 worth of goods without a PO just on somebody's say-so? That was commonly done?
I don't know about the $1,000, but I do know that you could go out and go to Stop and Shop, or you could go out to Lee's Market.
Petty cash?
It could be $50, $100, $150, though.
Yeah, but that's not $1,000.
Melissa?
Thank you. So these chairs were $40 a piece, but the reason that the bill was $1,039 is because there were 26 of these $40 chairs purchased. I'm not sure why this is such an issue if this was never brought up in the past when these things have happened.
I'll just speak to that piece of it. It just happened to catch my attention, to be quite honest, as I was flipping through the bill warrant, because of the dates more than anything. I agree with you. I think she needs to be reimbursed for the purchase of the chairs. My bigger concern was just the procedural part, and we all miss things. All 5 of us are going to miss things. This just happened to catch my attention in the way the timeframes were just a little different than some of the stuff when I flipped through. And that's all.
Can I ask you a question about that? So if I was to look at this bill warrant, I see Dr. Colley as superintendent had signed it. And then we have the vice principal who signed it. We have an account number listed. So what was it on this that caught your eye?
The purchase, it wasn't this piece, it was the actual receipt for the chairs was before the dates that were on the creation of this. The purchase was made prior to. It was the receipt that came along from Office Max or wherever it was from.
Was
That's
from
what
Staples.
cost. That's
The permission was given for that.
Yeah,
prior
and that's
to that,
what,
that
that's
day.
what it was. It was because the permission was given.
It
and the-
was.
And when I did question it, I was told that, yes, in fact, the chairs were in-house even before people had all known, because of people leaving. We had a principal leaving, and that's, I think, where some of the confusion came in. That's all. And I think this sat on Melissa's desk because she kept saying, when is this going to go to school committee? And it was just never put on the agenda. But it was the way it was the description, the time frame is what caught my attention. And I did question the superintendent on why it had this bizarre time frame.
But are you saying, when was the receipt dated? You're saying?
I don't have it. I'm not looking. It was before the superintendent even signed it. When I did question him, and he told me that you didn't even know about it until the chairs were at the elementary school. Is that?
No, we knew about it.
You did know,
We
okay.
did know. Both Tom and I knew. They had had a
I know Mr. Gastal did know.
Yep, but we both knew. And the other thing was that there was a very small window of opportunity to purchase the
Sure, 'cause
chairs
they were
at
on
that
sale.
price. And so that was another reason. And because we needed 26 of them, and rather than having to have them shipped from other places, the local Staples had 26 chairs. So it was really just, okay, you know what, go ahead and do it. And that's exactly what she did.
Oh, go ahead, Michael. You had your
Thank
hand
you. I just want to shed some light on past practices. As you all know, I refuse to sign most bill warrants over the past 2 years due to lack of purchase orders. There's a new system that we put in place. Purchase orders have invoices or requisitions with them now. There's been a past practice of when the bill warrant comes to us as the school committee, I'm not saying there wasn't purchase orders and requisitions, but we didn't see copies of them. But in the past, when I did ask for copies, and in particular, there were some in this area, this media and data technology area, that purchase orders were filled out when the invoice got here. So that is past practice, but I applaud you for catching that it's not following our new procedure, because that means we have a new procedure in place and we're all looking out, and that's why I'm now signing the warrants. So while this didn't have the requisition written ahead of time, permission was given. So that's the requisition procedure. It was just verbal, which is what we followed. I just wonder at this point if it makes sense to talk about, are we going to return the chairs, be done with them, or keep the chairs and pay for them? That's why I would urge us just to learn from the lesson and go forward.
Anything else?
Michelle, Dr. Dargan, do we have that original receipt available? I think I had asked for you to provide it to us this evening.
I don't have it. Melissa wasn't able to retrieve it. She was out on Friday, and she didn't, she'd have to go downstairs to be able to get it, so she doesn't have it readily available.
So we don't even have the backup documentation for this PO request in front of us now that we're being asked to approve?
Not in front of you tonight, but we do have it in possession here in the district. She just has to go to the basement and get it.
Is there anything else on this? All those in favor of Melissa's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed? No. I just want to clarify that, what is the process at this, today? If I am a teacher, or if I am whomever, and I need to purchase a physical something, I'm not talking about training and whatnot. I need to purchase a physical something for my classroom. What is my procedure to do that?
Typically, they'll go to the building administrator and make that request, or they go through curriculum. So it depends on where that line item may fall.
Okay.
But they put in the request, and then the administrator or the department head would then deem whether it was worthy of the purchase or not. A purchase order would then be generated.
Correct.
It is signed by the department head. It's signed by Melissa in the business office. It's signed by Mark Dupuy, the business manager. It's then signed by me. It's sent back to the department head, and that person then is ultimately responsible for either
making the purchase.
faxing it or exactly.
So the purchase order is supposed to be created prior to the
That's right.
purchase being made.
That's correct.
And that was my concern. And in most cases, the stuff that goes through the bill warrant that I see, that's what I would see. And mind you, I mean, for those that may not know, it's a pretty large book, and that's why I think 3 signatures is required, because it's easy to miss something as you're flipping through an entire, couple of weeks worth of bills for a $15 million budget. But that is the process. So the purchase order is created before
Correct.
the items are actually purchased.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Melissa?
But how would we have seen that purchase order wasn't there if the purchase orders aren't there when we go to sign the bill warrant?
This did have a purchase order with it. This the purchase order that we're looking at, that was in the bill warrant when
This here, this isn't a purchase order.
the one, what was I just looking at?
This is a payment bill form.
I'm sorry, the bill form that was here, all of the stuff, when I questioned this, and then I actually said to Melissa behind me, is there a purchase order that's generated with this, because the dates were funky. And honestly, the dates were weird on it, and including the superintendent at the time had said the same thing. And it was difficult because 2 people left.
That's right. 2 people that actually gave permission.
Right,
For
so
it to be purchased.
in that time frame
Mhm.
of the purchases being made, so it really did complicate things.
Mhm.
The way that the dates were on the stuff as I flipped through it.
Mhm.
And I would hope that the insinuation is not that I was looking for certain names. Does a particular name catch my eye as I go through the bill warrant? It's going to, of course. Because especially in cases like that, we need to make sure that we are crossing our Ts and dotting our
Mhm,
Is. Because we do want to make sure that we pass the muster.
course.
That's all.
Mhm.
And believe me, I know the person in question actually came up to me and said, look, I just wanted new chairs. And I get it.
We
And I
needed new
get that our
chairs.
kids needed new chairs.
Mhm.
That's not my point. I just want to make sure that we're following the process, because
Correct.
I would hate to see, for a relatively large purchase of a classroom full of chairs, a teacher just go out and buy chairs and then create a purchase order that goes along with it. That's all.
And I really, that never happens. I think it was because of the fact that there was that window of opportunity.
Right.
It was very
It was on
close to
sale.
the beginning of the
Sure.
school year, and we did have 2 people that were, within days, were no longer going to be in their positions. So it was basically, it was sort of a calamity of errors, if you will, but unfortunately, that's the way it played out.
And to be quite honest, as was brought to our attention 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, the job of the school committee is blah, 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 and one of our jobs is to sign bill warrants, and we have the opportunity to question things that come through in those books and ask why, and I ask why on a weekly basis about certain things, and very often they give me a good answer. In all honesty, I asked why on this particular one, and they all kind of went, we don't really have a good answer, here's what happened on this. So they actually were kind of like, well, this kind of did go through weird. So when I asked, they kind of gave me some feedback that was feeding my concerns of, let's just make sure that this is on the up and up, and also to make sure that we put it out there that a purchase was made by, certain people too. So that's all.
Okay.
So, Tony?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now that the rest of the members are here, why don't we go back to, we passed over
Skip the fingerprint one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
B on the
I
agenda.
apologize for being
Michael
late.
wasn't
That's
here
okay.
either.
Yeah, Mike just beat you in. So let's go back to B on the action agenda, actions needed for the new fingerprint law. And as we are all aware, last week we had a presentation on this new fingerprint law. Staff, current staff, and transportation bus drivers all have to get fingerprinted by law. The question was whether some of these other subgroups, it's up to the school committee to decide if some of these other subgroups would also need to be fingerprinted. So the list hasn't changed. First on the list is general school / after-school-based volunteers. So
Just, if I could, Mr. Chair, based on new information that came forward from our association, the Mass Association of School Committees, from Mike Gilbert, that the rollout for the fingerprinting program has been delayed. I wonder if we might want to pass over until January and focus on the issue that seemed to rise to the level of concern, and that was direct and unmonitored contact with children. That's our long discussion at the last meeting. Did wonder the definition and policy of direct and unmonitored contact with children. So I, for one, am not ready to vote on certain items on the list if, in fact, we can wait until January to get better details of our policy.
Thanks, Mike. I also read that information that you had sent, and yes, there's many. I'm sure there's many things in this law that they'll need to change and tweak, and as they roll it out, they'll realize that they'll have to do these things. But I think if we go through these and vote on them now, I mean, if the law does change and then we'll just have to, we'll simply, I mean, if the law changes, we'll have no choice but to follow the law. But putting it off, I mean, this is the second time it's been on the agenda. I think we should go ahead and just vote these up or down, whether we're going to have these subgroups get fingerprinted. Again, if the law changes, if the law says that, school committee members must be fingerprinted, then we'll all get fingerprinted. So I would like to go through the list, Melissa.
There were, I think, two things. One was, there was going to be I think you're going to look into who has direct contact by themselves for volunteers. And then the second question, I don't know if this was asked last time, is do we do any sorry checks? Because it's my understanding, and I might be wrong with this, but sorry is a little bit more where it just doesn't look at Massachusetts, and I believe that's...
We do not. We just do the query in Massachusetts, and it's solely exclusively in Massachusetts.
Now, what about the other piece? We're checking to see if we have volunteers who are by themselves with children, and that was something that I think we're going to look into.
Yeah, in speaking with the administrators, again, when volunteers come into the building, typically they come in for a specific task. So again, they come in, to help a teacher run off papers or to assist in working in the classroom with small groups. However, none of the administrators were comfortable with saying they could never say that a volunteer in the building would ever be unmonitored and alone with children. And the classic example is the example I gave you in another school district, whereas a volunteer was leaving, got himself into a restroom, and unfortunately it was a children's restroom. So, our restrooms are pretty much marked, adult only. However, none of them were ready to commit that, that may never happen. But volunteers, for the most part, come in. They do a wonderful job working with our children. They're throughout the school. Sometimes they're working in a corridor. Sometimes they're petitioned off in the lobby over at the West. But overall, in general, they very rarely will have unmonitored contact with children.
And to that point, again, I'm not, these laws have many unintended consequences, and obviously we want to keep our kids safe, but if a parent or a volunteer, if a volunteer is fingerprinted, that wouldn't stop that person from intentionally or unintentionally walking into the wrong restroom. I think, these are issues and things that schools, administrators, and teachers and staff deal with on a daily basis as far as, monitoring that stuff going on. So.
Yeah, and as we discussed at the last meeting, it was for the volunteers and not, and there seemed to be some concern over
Overnight volunteers.
burdening all volunteers, was the concern that was discussed, including overnight volunteers. But again, the direct and unmonitored contact with children in the policy should be something that our school administrators are comfortable with, but I believe we have to visit that with our policy subcommittee. Shame on us if we are not comfortable not allowing direct and unmonitored contact with children by volunteers who have not submitted to query checks. Let's lock the bathrooms.
No, they have a query. They have a-
Every volunteer
the
has a
fingerprinting,
query
rather.
before they're allowed to come in.
They're quarried, yes.
And we query
I-
actually on an annual basis, whereas actually the law says every 3 years but we do it on an annual basis.
All right, so let's
So
go.
do we have a policy for locking bathrooms and having a hall monitor or someone available to open the bathrooms if a student needs it during non-break time?
No.
Um,
The restrooms are always open. By law, you must keep at least one male and one female restroom open at all times, but we keep ours open for the youngsters, especially the younger the child, the smaller their bladder. That would make great demand on another adult to come. We would need a restroom monitor then.
All right, so if we could move down the list, number one on the list is general school / after-school-based volunteers. Is it the committee's wish that these people, that we require these people to get fingerprinted?
I'd like to make a motion that we do not require the general school-based volunteers to get fingerprinted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Melissa?
Can I,
Sure.
can I just open it up? I just feel like, at this point, we do Cory check, our volunteers that are just our regular, and I'm not talking field trips, for our regular volunteers, and we, being a volunteer and being in the school, and having volunteered for the time frame since my 18-year-old was in kindergarten, I really don't see a lot of opportunities for parents that our volunteers are alone. I see parents making copies for the children during the classroom. The kids walk themselves to the bathroom pretty much on their own. And the nurse, they have a thing on their, a little card that says they're heading to the nurse. And the teachers, the rooms are usually open, the classrooms are open. I just feel like I don't want to, we don't have a lot of volunteers as it is, and I don't want to discourage our parent volunteers from coming into our schools, and I don't want them to feel like that we don't want them either. So that's my feeling on this.
I think we have great volunteers too, and I don't want to discourage our parents from volunteering. I'm a volunteer as well, but my concern is if it can open up a possibility, and there's nothing that's going to take away the risk 100%, I know that, but if it can take away the possibility for at least one potential episode like the one that happened recently in an area school not too long ago, I don't see how I couldn't do that. How, even though it's $35 that these parents would potentially be paying, I don't see how, I for one, as a parent, and my husband's a parent, would pay the money if it means that it could potentially stop something from happening. So I wish there was something else. I wish there was a way we could look at some sort of registry across the United States, or we could say no child will be left alone with a volunteer. We can guarantee that. I mean, our schools are a place where our children should feel safe all the time, and I want to try to guarantee that as much as possible. So as much as I don't want to charge our families or our volunteers, because I don't, I couldn't, I just don't feel right about saying yes to that.
I mean, my issue with this is that you have volunteers that come in here and do stuff, and they don't have any contact with kids. And to require those people, because you can't say, oh, you yes and you no, you have to, it's a blanket, to require that group of volunteers to go take, and they're sitting there saying, I go in and make copies for the teachers. I'm not even in the classroom. Why the heck am I being fingerprinted? I think is off-putting. I think is it sends the wrong message. I don't believe that volunteers are running rampant through the schools unattended with children by themselves. I think most of the buildings, maybe the high school's a different issue, but you're talking closer to adults at this point, so the concerns are slightly different up here. But I think most of the lower level schools, you've got adults constantly milling about, staff people. The volunteers, I don't think, are off on their own. I think there's enough supervision in the buildings, and I believe that this would send a chill factor into our volunteer ranks that would reduce the number of volunteers and put an additional burden on our teachers that are already overstressed with the amount of stuff they have to do because of the small amount of supports that we're providing them because of lack of funding.
Do you think that we could table this to next time and ask our PTO what they think? I'd like to get some input from some of our parents and our volunteers, because like I said, I'm a volunteer and I don't have extra money to be spending, but on this, I would be willing to do it. But I'd like to get some feedback to see how they feel. What do they think? They are our, a lot of our volunteers. I think they may be able to say, have some sort of input might be helpful. So.
I thought that was what the last 2 weeks were about. Who's next? Melissa, Michelle, then Michael.
As a committee, whatever we decide, as a volunteer, I'm happy to do. If I'm asked to do it, I will do it. My concerns, I think, are that the state hasn't made this easy for people, making them travel to Fall River and different places to even get fingerprinted, and that's only in May, even. And some of our families may have to travel to Brockton, our newer hires, or wherever. That's part of my concern, is that the state at this point isn't making it easy. And perhaps if they made it easier by allowing it to be done in the school, for example, like you do with your Corey, you give them your license and they take a picture of it and off it goes, then I might feel differently. And I imagine after this rolls out and once they work out the kinks, they're probably going to make it easier to get it done. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the process of that. I'm opposed to the fact that I feel like they haven't really thought it through really well yet, and they aren't making it easy for people. I mean, if you are a teacher or an administrator, and I know we talked a little bit about this last time, part of having that license is going to conferences and whatnot, and maybe being put out a little bit, and that I agree with. Also, having to pay the fee like you do for your educator's license, paying that fee. But I think for a parent coming into the school, I'd like to see it be made a little bit simpler for them to go through the process. So for me, it's not necessarily the process that I'm opposed to. It's the fact that it is very difficult. It's going to be a pain for them to go out and get this done, and, for school-based volunteers. And, as far as questioning the PTOs and whatnot, I don't know that that's a big enough sample of people. If we did something like that, I'd rather see a bigger sample of input than just our PTOs. While, they tend to be our more active people, I'd be curious to see the others that, so if we do that, I would just ask that we send out maybe something blanket to the schools. Would this hinder would you be willing to pay? And if you did, would this, hinder your volunteerism or whatever, than just to the PTOs, so.
Okay. All right, let's, Michael, then Carolina, and then let's vote on this.
Again, my previous comment, which represented defining who the volunteers may or may not be who have direct and unmonitored contact with children, somewhat we're doing that by policy. If I understood, we're already Corey checking volunteers, okay? And the policy is we actually have to Corey check the volunteers who have the potential for unmonitored contact with children. So we're accepting that all our volunteers may have contact with children. What I'd like to see is separating that. And I don't want to make it more complicated on who the volunteers are, but I think we should get to that point. And perhaps if we're going to go through this tonight, we'll have an opportunity to revise it. But right now, I do believe that those volunteers that would be escorting children to the bathroom we might want to consider as a subcategory. I don't know why we're querying checking those volunteers that are coming in to make copies for a teacher and not anticipated to have direct unmonitored contact. So that's, perhaps we can visit it afterwards. But
Just, Mike, just to clarify that, any volunteer, anybody that wants to volunteer in our buildings must be queried. So regardless of what they do, that's the law,
Well,
and
short of,
we make them do it.
short of
It's not
rewriting the law, again.
Well, we
I
make
would
'em do that.
Repeat what the law says. It's for volunteers who may have direct
But again, like you stated,
and
I think that's
unmonitored contact.
impossible.
So we go beyond what the
Yes.
law is,
Anyone who volunteers in our buildings
Right.
now gets query checked.
which is beyond the law.
And for the first time, I'm reading this piece about this wrap back system that the FBI will, at some point in the not-too-distant future, constantly run checks on these fingerprints. So I got a parent submits fingerprints, they're in the system for a year, they leave, and now people in this system are getting potential future charges of this person who's no longer even here. I mean, wow, that's really disturbing. I'm sorry. That's an invasion of privacy. If I'm here and I'm with the kids, that's one thing, but once I've left the system, what is the mechanism to make sure that I'm purged out of the system and nobody's following up on my activities because I no longer am volunteering for the schools?
Okay.
Well, if they don't commit a crime, they won't.
All right, so we have a motion and a second Monet, what's the motion? To accept, to have general school and after-school based volunteers not be fingerprinted. Is that your motion? Not to be fingerprinted?
Yes, that's correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
All right, next on the list, and this is where I thought we...
Opposed?
I'm sorry, opposed? The motion passes. Next on the list is where I thought we were going to, no, we don't need
She
a
has
name.
to write it in.
Sorry. She's paying more attention than me.
That's why I don't
Next
wait.
on the list, I thought we were going to separate, and well, I guess we can do that right now, separate field trip volunteers, regular, taking the kids to the zoo, and the overnight volunteers.
Tony, if you look at
I
the
thought-
memo, the motions are actually worded for us.
Are they?
Yes.
What are you saying? I'm not doing a good job?
No, I'm saying that it is separated in
Okay, so,
the
all
actual
right.
request for separate votes in this memo.
Is this not back?
blotter.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
on.
Oh, okay.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead, Melissa. Michelle.
I do want to comment to this one. This one, to me, I feel like field trips are different, very different, because in a field trip situation, I don't care whether it's overnight or during the day. You have a small group of children that you are responsible for, and I know when I take my children on field trips and I am an approved chaperone, I am responsible for that small group of children, and very often I look around and I don't see anybody else from the school in my vision. Anything could happen. So I do feel that, in personal opinion, this is the place that if we're going to start fingerprinting our volunteers, this is for any type of off-school, off-campus. We should be asking a little bit more of our parents. These parents are giving generally a little bit more. They may have to drive themselves to wherever the field trip is, spend their own gas, sometimes even pay their own way. And, this is a place where I think we take the extra mile and make sure that our children are safe, in my own personal opinion. I don't care whether it's overnight or not. To me, going out of school is going out of school. And, that's just my own personal feeling on this. I don't necessarily feel that
So you guys
one
wanna-
requires and one doesn't.
But this, let's do them separately, if you would. So let's talk about, single day field trips. You leave in the morning, you come back that afternoon, and anything but an overnight. Let's.
Can I ask for a clarification with regard to when the requirement is? Because my understanding is for teachers that are already in our system, the requirement is not they don't have to be fingerprinted until what, 2016?
Yes. It's crazy.
So we're now gonna
Only
say
new
our
staff.
teachers don't need to be fingerprinted when they're in our schools with our kids on a daily basis by themselves, but the volunteers that are periodically once, maybe a year, we're gonna make them do fingerprints right now?
Why can't we make the motion to start at the same time as the teachers?
Because the reg is the reg, you can't change the reg.
No, the right.
No, this is, these
No,
are
no,
our
no, I'm talking,
options.
oh, you're saying for the volunteers?
For the volunteers.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we could do that. But, I mean, I have a concern about that it's, they get 2 years, but
There's
the
there's a lot of
volunteers.
holes in this law. It's not.
I mean,
All
I
right,
still
so
think we should
let's-
table
let's
it
move
for a
this
year
on.
until they work the kinks out of the
But
law.
we could, but when the law changes, and it will change, and the law, 3 months from now says, this group of people need to be fingerprinted, I mean, that will be the law, and we'll simply do that. But we just need to go through this and get this off the agenda for now. So, field trip volunteers, so not overnights, so anything but like an overnight, Washington trip, the Alps.
I'd like to make a motion to require chaperones participating in field trips which only occur during the day under regular staff employee supervision to complete a background check with the understanding it's in accordance with the law that they will continue to submit an annual query check starting next school year. So not this school year, next school year.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just, for clarification, in the motion, we're requiring by that motion to complete a background check. Are we now saying fingerprinting is called a background check? I just want clarification on that.
We still will need to continue the query.
But what I'm saying is that the motion says background check. It's not specific background check including fingerprints.
Well, it says the new act relevant to background checks.
So
I
the
guess
motion
they're
means
referring to the
fingerprinting.
Means
fingerprinting.
in addition to the query.
Yeah, they say background checks, they're referring to the act.
Well, the motion
Yes.
doesn't
Well-
refer to the act.
Can I just get a clarification on the time frame on this again? Just
Next school year, September.
starting in
So,
Sep-
so September, so because our volunteers have already went through the process, as far as they know, they're already all set for this year. So to have them, get a call, okay, you can't go to Sally's field trip tomorrow because you weren't fingerprinted because we just passed something. So next school year, when they do the queries, maybe, we can have that little bus come down that they said to come in and do the fingerprinting for those people.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's going to be a bus.
Well, if we get.
drag 40 people. You need 40 people, not
All
39.
right,
sure
so
you
do
tell
we
them they
have
have
we
to
have a
bring their
second. Does
checkbook,
everybody
too.
understand the motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
No. All right, so next, let's discuss the field trip volunteers overnight. So these would be parents who volunteer to go, say, on the middle school Washington trip where they're away for 2 nights, 3 nights, or any other overnight field trip. So is there a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion. Motion to require any volunteer chaperone participating in an overnight school-related activity to complete a background check, including fingerprinting, in accordance with the new act relevant to background checks.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion?
I didn't say starting next school year because I wasn't sure I don't know what I want because we're talking overnight. I think I'm almost leaning towards we want it as soon as possible, but I don't want to hinder a trip that's already in place.
How many overnights do we do? Is it the Washington?
And occasionally we have the trip to Europe. Occasionally we'll have a ski trip. I mean, there's tonight,
So the ski
tonight in your
trips, yeah,
packet,
okay.
it's a day trip, but occasionally there may be a weekend overnight trip. But, and those trips are brought before you in a real
Yeah.
timely fashion too.
So the first overnight is April,
Correct.
Europe, April vacation, right?
And then we have the
Washington in
Washington
May.
trip.
I didn't get my invitation for that Europe trip. Must be lost in the mail. All right. So as it states,
Well, I'm just not sure if I should amend it to start next year. What are you?
My feeling on, and having been on the overnights, and I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that any of our parents have, or whatever, but there are many opportunities, you know, on an overnight, period, end of story. And, you know, and I think the safety of our students, you know, and in the event that it prevents one in a situation like this, then, you know, I would like to see this. But I also, did they say March? Was it March that it was going to be made available locally? Is that what it was?
They were initially going to have the soft rollout in December, and then in January, the full-blown rollout. They've postponed it because they didn't get enough communities volunteering for the soft rollout. So the
Shocking.
soft rollout now is
Imagine that.
January, with the official rollout for all being February. Westport actually volunteered to be one of the districts as part of the soft rollout. So we're not sure if we're going to be chosen or not. But really, when all set is up, you know, now they're saying February at the earliest.
My concern is requiring our parents that maybe, although I think very few go in April, I think it's mostly staff, but requiring our parents to drive up to Brockton to be fingerprinted. I don't know how I feel about that.
You'll also see in your packet, one of the considerations is we know Arlen Bachelor has the Japanese students come on an annual basis in March. And so when we start talking about, you know, field trip volunteers considering overnight, the question then in your packet becomes what happens when we are the host families as well? Do we want them to be fingerprinted?
And keep in mind that the teachers going on that Europe trip will not be fingerprinted.
Yeah, my feeling is let's start this I think start this next year.
So I'd like to make an amendment to my motion to start next year.
All right, so we have
Next school year.
next
Thank
school
you.
year. So we have a motion and a second.
And I'd like to add to that, you know, this is something that's been brought on us through state legislation. Over the years, I've known many volunteers on overnight trips, and in particular the Washington trip, and I've never had any concern of the person that I might know that went on that trip. This in no way, how I may be voting, is a reflection on past participants. It's raises an eyebrow when this type legislation is pushed through. There's a reason for it, and I recognize the reason, just in scanning through the times we live in. So as much as I just want to make it clear that this is not in any way an indication of our concerns. It's creating a safety zone area around travel, and that's what I'm comfortable with. Thank
All
you.
right, so all in favor?
Aye.
No.
Opposed? No. All right, so now the next one on this list, that field trip one day, which I don't see, what's the difference between that and the other one?
that
We just
already.
did, we did
Well,
those.
yeah, the first one.
No, we did the.
So they in,
We did
okay,
both
all right,
of them.
okay, all right, I
We
see what
did
you guys
both
did,
of them.
okay, all right, that's good. Better for me. All right, next on the list, subcontractors, construction maintenance related only. And I was just, the information that you sent me spoke about, or the law speaks about subcontractors and, you know, we hire someone to come into the building and do a specific job. They're here to do a specific job. They're usually not left alone. Contractors that return, you know, contracts that return often,
They could.
cable people.
They have the potential to being left alone. However, given the fact that this may be a concern and possibly may prohibit us from getting cost-effective subcontractors and vendors, our proposal would be that we establish a policy that no vendor, no subcontractor be left alone to be in that potential situation. Because yes, now, occasionally, very rarely, might they be left, but technology is usually with the vendor. Mike Duwad or a custodian is usually with the vendor. but we could establish a policy so as not to prohibit, a lower cost vendor to be able to come into our district. So that would be our
That's exactly what I
proposal.
was going to say. All right, is there a motion on that one?
To not require the background check for subcontractors and in construction maintenance related.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can you amend it to say, and to address it in policy? No? Can we at least, I just want to make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks.
Well, I mean, we can agree to address it in policy. I don't think that's.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be part of the
All
motion.
right,
Yes.
that's fine.
Peace.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. School committee members,
All right. Can I make a motion?
that's us. Go ahead. That's us's.
I'd like to make a motion that we require all school committee members to be fingerprinted. My feeling is that, beginning the next school year, my feeling is that if we're going to require it of our volunteers, then we buck up and we do the same thing.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, I certainly have no concern with that. We all recognize we're public figures when we take on an elected position. I think many of us probably have our fingerprints in the system, hopefully for good
Why'd you
reasons.
look at me?
Hopefully for good reasons. I look at you because of your military background.
My fingerprints are on the cookie jar, that's it.
I wouldn't be surprised if people involved in our great court system may occasionally have been fingerprinted for one reason or the other, and I've had clearance to be on shipping ports, so I'll be happy to fingerprint. Let's bring the cart down here and make it easy, so.
No, there ain't gonna be a bus. There's a lot of buses we're waiting for in this district. All right, any further discussion on having school committee members fingerprinted next year, or next school year, or no?
In accordance with the law.
Tomorrow, before Christmas.
She said next.
No,
year.
next
school
school
year.
Okay, so whoever's here in September will get fingerprinted. That's the motion anyway. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay.
Did you say no?
Yeah, it's, how are we any different? Student teachers, student observers, practicum students, or student teachers. It's just a hard way of saying student teachers. All right, so, no, they got student teachers. Student teachers, student observers. Oh, what's a student observer name?
They may have to do 15, 20 hours
Project,
as a
right.
freshman or a sophomore in college
Okay.
before they actually get out to do student teaching.
Okay. All right, Mr. Sullivan, and then Melissa.
Just for clarification, a student observer, let's say a high school student is getting involved in volunteering down at the middle school. They're not going to be considered a student observer. I want to make sure that we're not, in no way is any of these approvals pointing to actual student body.
We don't query anybody, who's a minor anyway. Typically the juvenile records are sealed or not able to be retrieved. So if they are, 16, 17, 18, we may query them, but certainly our high school students have an opportunity to go down and do volunteer work. Last year we had the advocates go over to the MAC and participate in physical education. We didn't query those students going over.
Okay, even if they were 18, okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Okay. So all,
I
somebody
will-
make a motion?
I will make the motion to require all students completing an internship, practicum, and/or observations to complete a background check in accordance with the new act relevant to background checks.
Second.
Can I,
Oh, I'm sorry, you want them to, the motion is to have them get fingerprinted? Is that what it's saying?
That's what my motion said.
Okay. And a
My-
sec- and
my-
a second? Discussion?
My discussion, just to open it up, I feel, especially for students that are going through the practicums and internships, part of what they're going to have to do is get a background check as a teacher. So, to me, that is part of the process for them as well. So look at it as a learning experience.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
no,
Opposed?
I just say, I think all of this stinks.
Second.
Motion passes. All right, hardship exceptions slash waivers,
We voted on that last time.
we did.
It says this was voted to previously.
Right. We said no.
Do you read your
Yes.
packet, Tony?
Yeah, I did. I didn't read this.
We said no for waivers for teachers, but now that we're having some volunteers, do we want to have waivers for if there's a hardship for our volunteers? For our overnight volunteers, field trip volunteers?
That's kind of hard to swallow.
Mm.
I'm going on a trip to the Alps and I need a waiver because I can't.
They do have to pay for their trip to
Well,
Europe.
let's say they're going to the zoo, you know, like their overnight, not overnight, but day trip. Just food for thought.
I'm not ready to, I'm not ready to change that yet.
All right, so do we have a, so all right, so we decided that last week, so, okay. so
Mickey did say we can go back and
Right.
address all of this too.
Michael?
My point exactly is that we're, accepting this with the advice of our Human Resources Department. We may have to tweak our policy, and we'll be very diligent and concerned with student safety in doing so, but right now, I think let's see what hardship may in fact be there, and then in the future, we can address it.
Mickey also did say that, if I remember correctly, that we are not given a waiver. So as a district, if we apply a waiver to a family, then we still have to pay for it. So it still comes out of our money. So I'm not ready personally to do that yet. Because then volunteering ends up costing us money in that respect.
Yeah, and to be clear, in case it's not clear, the waiver is for the fee. It's not to get the fingerprinted. It's
Right.
actually just for the fee.
And the district is still responsible for the fee, even if a hardship waiver is granted.
Yes. Basically, yeah, it just puts the hardship on the
On
school.
us.
All right, so, and again, like Mr. Sullivan said, we can certainly, and I'm sure we will be back at all these in the future. All right, last on the list is to appoint school committee officer to oversee the superintendent's background check. So superintendent, as an employee of the district, will have to get fingerprinted, and so we need someone to actually look at that report
Can I ask a
and
question?
clear the superintendent, I guess.
Who usually looks at the other reports?
Vicky.
Mickey does. So typically when you do a query, most people, there is no query. So that's easy. We are starting to see more and more query reports be generated then. And so as any query that comes back goes through then me, and I take a look at the query. Now, some of our volunteers, because they've been here on an annual basis, something may show up that's 10, 15, 20 years old, and they have already been approved to be a volunteer. So initially, past practice in this district that I continued is, depending on the offense, you know, if they were 18 years old and now they're 36 or 40 years old and want to come in and volunteer, and it wasn't a crime against a person, it may have been driving without a license or, disorderly conduct, perhaps when they were 18 years old. However, a crime against a person, anything within the last 10 years, etc., a meeting is actually held. And the person is provided by law their query and have an opportunity to have a conversation, and then a determination is made whether they are allowed. And you really look at what the opportunity is. You know, is it a one-day field trip? Is it a bus driver? So depending on the position or why they're being queried also plays into the factor on whether it's been approved or not. Occasionally, not in this district, but in the past, I've called the chief of police, who will not give you any guidance or recommendation. That's not their job or place, but you can confer and you can consult, to ask what their opinion. However, ultimately, it would be a superintendent's decision.
So my question, I guess, is more along the lines of, should this be 2 people instead of just 1? That was my only question.
I mean, I
don't
guess-
know. 'Cause I was
I guess
wondering
it could be, I guess. Michael?
I'd be happy to read the motion, which I think addresses that question. Motion to appoint the school committee chair to process and review, with the assistance of Human Resources Executive Assistant, background check. The school committee chair will make a suitability determination and sign off on the form that may be required to be submitted to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Second that motion? That was a motion, right?
That was a motion.
Second.
Can I ask a question? Is the only reason we're doing this is because Mickey is the person running the quarries?
No, the superintendent's Corey.
I know.
I mean, the
but-
superintendent's fingerprint, someone has to check that one.
but the-
So the vote then right now is in any school district is taking the vote on who's going to oversee the superintendent. Then down the road, yes, we can talk about, because of the conflict of interest, if we're going, that route, then ultimately who would be that other person. What I can tell you is I interviewed a candidate yesterday for the HR position, and she will let me know whether, in a day or two, whether she will accept that position or not. So we hope to have an HR very, very soon.
Yeah, but my question is, previously when quarries were run on the superintendent, it never came, we didn't ever have anything to do with that.
I guess we probably should have, though. That's this kind of, what if you had,
None of us were sitting when the last superintendent was hired. I
I don't know if he
Don't
was,
you
I
guys
don't
run
know if he,
quarries
I don't know
yearly
if,
on yourselves as well?
No, they do it on the employees every 2 years here.
Oh, so our volunteers have to do it yearly, but the employees only do it every 2 years. That's great.
Why is that?
Maybe because the volunteers changed.
volunteers do
Maybe.
change, true. Again, something we could change.
My question was actually, you kind of addressed it, is that Mickey is this person?
Right.
So that's my concern with the motion tonight as it stands. I get that it's in the works. So as of right now, I have an issue with the motion because of that.
Well, I think the motion could stand as is generically and then address the other issues separately. In the cases where there's a conflict, the chair would.
You have to be authorized to run a quarry is the problem. Not anybody can just run a quarry.
Well,
There's a
now,
process.
This doesn't authorize me to run it, it's look at the report.
looking
It's
at it.
look at it once it gets done.
And it's not the quarries yet.
But this is the fingerprint, yeah, this is
Right,
the new
and
fingerprint.
this is not, I'm playing devil's advocate.
So,
here.
we
This is-
could
This is
add
not
that.
personal, but the reality is, I'm running the quarry, and I say there is no quarry, but there is. Because I don't want anybody to know the quarry. How are you gonna know?
But this is a fingerprint, this isn't a quarry.
No, she's just saying generically,
generally.
who
Just
checks the
just
human
generic.
resource person that they're doing their job, basically.
Right, in the instance of a conflict, where there's the potential of an inherent conflict. And again, this is not, and that's the reason why you have to create this separate zone. So it wouldn't be that person who would run the initial. You wouldn't be able to let that person do it because of the potential of,
Can we table this one?
yes.
I think we can make this motion, and the other issue we could,
Yeah, but this motion, my problem with the motion
Point
is
of
this
information.
motion includes the human resources
person.
executive assistant, which
Which
is,
Mickey.
Mickey.
with the chair, whoever the chair is at the time. I mean, the chair is there, though.
no, I understand that, but I'm not suggesting anybody would do this. I'm just to remove any
I've got
question.
a point of order, Mike.
Yeah, I
What's
just,
your point of order?
is there a date specific? I thought this was, the teachers have to do it in 20,
That's why I'm
16.
suggesting we table this, because then
is that
maybe we
also
can answer
the
this better.
effective date of the superintendent? Because that is
None
the
of these
staff-
have date specifics.
Unless your superintendent were a new hire.
Right.
So
So
if
it's-
next school year, July 1, you hire a new superintendent from the outside, then that person would be subject to the background check immediately.
Right, so what I'm saying is this doesn't have the date, but it says in accordance with the act. And-
Yeah, so she,
And what I'm saying is.
so the
that
superintendent wouldn't actually have to do it till 16,
Right, so that,
because you're a current employee.
and would not be
By law, by law.
acceptable that the if
A relative.
a relative was serving in the check, but I don't think this motion addresses that. I think that's part of the act, I have to imagine. Certainly part of our policies, background checks, and relatives don't do background checks here, I would imagine, at any level.
Okay, but we have a motion and a second on the table.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
How do other districts do it? How have other districts been doing it?
They're asking that about us.
So I would
We're
concur
plowing
with
the road.
Michelle that it doesn't have to happen until 2016, we just table this and figure
Just
it
till
out.
the 8th
Especially
and see
in
what
light of the
happens.
fact that if she hires someone new, then, that issue's off the table. Why put it on the table now when we don't have to?
Yeah, but if what you just said happens, this motion, we could still make this motion today. to
Yeah,
get
but
that
the last
done.
person wasn't even here, what, a week, and she left?
All right, but we got a motion and a second. You want to rescind your second? All in favor of the motion to have the chair of the school committee be the person along with the human resource executive assistant to basically sign off on the superintendent's fingerprint check, background check? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. And again, the committee will deal with the other issue, if in fact it is still an issue. Okay, all right, that's good.
No, that's not good. That is all that is lousy that we have to.
Oh,
go
yeah, no,
through
no, I
this.
agree, it's definitely lousy.
They
All right,
shouldn't.
so we are all the way down to approval of a field trip for the Westport High School, grade 9 through 12, to Mount Cranmore. This is the ski trip.
So moved.
Second. Oh,
Any
give it to
discussion?
Melissa.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Approval of a field trip to Westport High School, grades 11 and 12, to the New England Institute of Technology
So moved.
in Warwick. So this is an out-of-state, well, both of them are out-of-state. That's why we're approving. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And you guys have in front of you, I'm going to do this as new business. This is a field trip request that came in after the packet was put out. And Westport High School, grade 9 through 12, to the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Rhode Island. And this trip is to go see the Providence Bruins on Friday, January 24th, 2014. From 5:30 to 10:30, this school bus will pick up the students and chaperones at 5:30 from the high school and return at around 10:30. 42 students, 7 chaperones, signed off by the principal, the assistant, the superintendent. So, okay, and is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I just, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why is it here today, the 24th? We have a meeting before the 24th. Why isn't it on that? It's not on
good
the
question.
agenda. It's,
There was a reason.
Just to give the kids the opportunity
Sign.
to sign up for it,
Yeah.
to look for, make sure we have enough volunteers, et cetera. The next meeting is January 8th, and then we have one on the 22nd. And the feeling was is that the 8th might be a little too close to get a number of students to actually participate.
Yes.
In past years, I believe our music group
They go.
was involved in the trip and played?
Not this
or-
one. No.
no, the
this
middle
is
school, that
different.
was last year, the middle school went to
They
the
go in
Bruins.
April.
Kevin Clark is the advisor for the DECA Club.
This is different.
What is it?
It's DECA, the entrepreneurship club that just
It's like a
got
business
started
thing.
this year, right?
Thank
Right,
you.
so
Is
is
there
there
a
a
second?
second?
I'll second it.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
The one you're talking about, Michael, is the P. Bruins, the kids perform at in April.
I
That's
just-
different than.
I didn't
Just to
wa-
go
I
see a
didn't want to
game,
miss
right?
that
This one,
one,
yeah.
so.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next on the action agenda, G, approval of a cable access specialist job description. Dr. Dark?
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier under superintendent's report about the cable committee's recommendation to the selectmen and the selectmen ultimately voting to give the school department $55,000 to begin the back-end head, as well as to roughly order equipment for student use and to start the video clubs. This would allow us, if funds become available through the cable committee, we would like to be able to have this position already approved, posted, and be able to put someone in the position. Again, it would be funded purely through the charter cable monies.
I just have a question. This looks like a full-time position, and my understanding when we were discussing this at the cable committee meeting was that we were talking about stipends for teachers initially, that this is not something that was going to happen, at least, I mean, the $30,000 that we did not get for our budget, all we were given was less than what we were originally given at the committee meeting for equipment. They stripped back equipment and they stripped back the entire budget. So we have no budget this year at all for stipends for anything. This looks like a cable access person job, not like a school person. So I have issues with the way this job description reads and what I envisioned we were talking about at the cable committee meeting that the school was needing. This almost sounds like what Valerie does, which is very different than I think what we were talking about. So
I think Mr. Noguera's position was if a club were canceled, such as yesterday, the inclement weather, etc., and this person showed up, reported for duty, we would be able to use this person in other cable capacities. Take the children's shows that they have produced, etc., and then be able to do the behind-the-scenes uploading too as well. So granted, we may find someone who has more of the front-end experience, but the technology department is willing to train and assist that person to help with the management piece of it too as well.
I actually had questions as well on this. And I actually agree initially when I took a quick look at the job description on this. To me, it looks like we're talking about a cable person, recording things. And I think some of it is really just in the wording of the job description. For example, where it says on section, under the performance responsibilities, under H, train clients in operation of broadcast hardware. As I look a little deeper into this, I'm guessing it should really read students. So that's what I would rather see is the description there that says that they're working with students, because it doesn't sound like that. By using words like clients, it sounds like
Valerie does.
much more official, I guess. What I envision is somebody that can work with the students, teach them the ins and outs of broadcasting, how things are maybe video recorded, uploaded, et cetera, but to me this loses it because we're using words like clients and things like that, and to just anybody looking at this, seeing us potentially approving this, they'll be like, what did you guys just approve? Are you kidding me? I would just like to see it reworded.
Just the title, cable access specialist.
Or reworded.
I'm thinking, again, I wasn't at that, Caroline is on the cable, she's our cable committee rep.
It sounds like a cable.
Yeah,
Right.
the job sounds like it should, what I envision would be almost like a media, audio, video, media specialist person. This sounds like a, not Valerie's that's a bad thing, but it sounds different than, I think, what we're thinking.
A club advisor.
But my other concern is it says it's 12 months and there's no implication here that it's part-time, full-time, which is of great concern because the monies we didn't get, the monies that were put on the table were only $30,000. That's not going to pay anywhere near a full-time person's salary plus. So I really do think this is needs to be reworked. When we had our discussion, I was thinking something very different. When I saw this, I was like, no, this is not what I had in my brain. So I think it's too generic for initially what I think we were thinking of moving this project forward with. And maybe 2-3 years from now, when we can finally get the education piece of the cable fully ensconced and fully funded the way it should be, and should have been for all these years, something with this amplified stuff might be more appropriate. But right now, we don't have the funding to even begin to look at this kind of thing, in my opinion.
Melissa, then Michael.
So, first, I love the qualification 15. I think it should be on every job description, including ours, although we have a lot of this. Patience, flexibility, and sense of humor. That's great.
That should be number one, because that would make the application process very short
I think
for a lot of people.
I think the clients is a little misleading.
Leave
I think
now.
if we had students, that would be a little bit better. Q does say responsible for leading an audiovisual after-school program for elementary, middle school, and high school students, which, so it almost is like, the H and I don't kind of go with the Q, but so like I think kind of some
Get that.
wordsmithing there might be helpful. And where it says the terms of employment 12 months, my take on that is that they'd be working for 12 months, but not necessarily in a full-time or part-time capacity. But that maybe should be spelled out a little bit so that someone would know up to 30 hours a week, or up to, we don't know. But besides that, I think it's a great
Position to have.
yeah, it's a
Good
great
start.
position to have, and this is great to get some talking going.
Michael? Then,
Yeah,
and then Dr. Dodge.
My understanding, I hate to say recollection because it may simply be a misunderstanding of what was presented, but that we were talking of more of a club advisor stipend situation. Certainly these responsibilities go above and beyond, but I do see many of these responsibilities fitting nicely into our newly formed data technology team. And so as much as I'm looking forward to the video club, the one question I had was, we have a videography classroom now, I thought, of some kind.
No.
Okay.
We used to have a studio.
And there's still a sign on a door that should be taken down, I think.
Callahan.
I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone, but we have a sign on a door that indicates as a classroom. And I was a little confused because I thought it was this coming forward, because we have talked about this for the past year or so. I look forward to expansion of programs. Now is not the time. I would send this back for a redraft and create a club advisor position at this time.
Kelly, well, all right, let's just vote on this. So, is there a motion?
No, I mean, I think we just
Did we
table
did we
it.
have
I
a
think
motion?
we
You guys want to just
No, there
table
wasn't
it?
a
motion. I think
There
we
was
just
no
table
motion.
it. It needs to go back and be reworked. I think we're
All
all
right, so
pretty much
Dr.
in agreement
Dodgen's
of that.
nodding her head, she understands, okay. Kelly, just for myself and people out there in TV land, we're talking about this cable money. Quickly,
So-
what is this? Give
So
us a little brief,
the
history.
charter cable provides cable services to the town, and the people purchase their cable, and portions of those monies are given back to the town for public access. And there's three pieces of public access. There's the public, there's the education, and there's the governmental channel. Unfortunately, the education piece has been missing for at least 10 years, if not longer. We haven't gotten any monies from the charter funds. It's all been used for the public and governmental channels.
And this goes into a revolving fund? Is that what this
There's a
money goes?
revolving fund, and then every year they expend money, and there's a budget, and the budget gets drawn down on. This year, right? I think we just re-signed a new 10-year contract with Charter, 10 or
10 years?
15-year
Yes.
contract. And as part of that, there's a perk they give you, and I think they They gave us $200,000 for equipment for the next 10 years or 15. I can't remember which it was, Michael.
10 years.
To be used to purchase equipment, to upgrade, and for maintenance through the system. Every year they generate around 200 and change, 270, 280, somewhere in that line, I believe, in income that gets spent. So this year, all of the equipment on the town side were going to be upgraded, and we were finally going to get new equipment because our equipment is like 15, 20 years old. The Department of Revenue apparently came in and said that there was a cap on the spending, that we were going to spend about $300,000, but we're not allowed to. We can only spend 200 and change. As a result, they reeled back our actual operating budget that we were going to use for the stipends to create the video clubs for the kids, and they reeled back some of the equipment. They cut back some of the equipment on the town side as well, but their operating budget remained whole. They didn't lose any monies on their operating side. In July, the new year starts again, and at that point, what was represented was that we would then get the funding for the stipends, which we had initially asked for the $30,000.
So these monies haven't been automatically, a percentage or whatever
There's no
allocated to the
percentage.
schools?
They've-
It just
For
goes into
whatever
this revolving
reason,
account?
the school used to have a studio. They used to produce television shows. They had a news program. And I don't know when, where, or why that program was dismantled. That predates, I think that predates Dr. Galton. Maybe it doesn't.
That teacher was let go in the early 2000s, I believe.
So that program basically just got dismantled. And nothing ever progressed until last year we started sitting at the table again and asking, where's the education piece of the cable
And how
money?
much is in that revolving account now?
It was 300 and something. It was actually more than that. It was 400 and something. There was a big bucket of money that was there, sitting there. And now it's starting to be spent. But hopefully in July we will get what's been represented, at least $30,000 for an operating budget, so that we can put those programs in place starting in September, and we can actually launch the video programs at the three schools, the elementary, the middle school, and the high school, as well as upgrades and augment some of the equipment purchases that are going to be happening. They're going to upgrade the auditorium with equipment for when they tape there, so that they don't have to move things around it as much. They're going to upgrade in this room so that they will have better mics and better cameras. And then they're going to purchase equipment that would be used for student use. The intent was also to have training for the students so that eventually they could actually be filming the school committee meetings, and they could take the equipment and be filming some of the sporting events, the basketball games, and those things would then be able to be broadcast on the education channel, as opposed to the only thing that pretty much is on there is us. And then there's talk about streaming and YouTube and all other kinds of things, but that's somewhere down the line.
All right, thanks.
But we're back at the table, and we hopefully,
And earlier this year, or not too long ago, we thought we were going to be able to do that other part this year, but
it was,
because of that cap.
last week is when the Department of Revenue apparently came in, and they saw that we were going to spend $300,000, and they said, no, you can only spend a percentage, a cap percentage based upon your tax levy amount, which amounted to 200 and something thousand. So
Michael?
that's why it was reeled back.
So as we're looking at creating the club, again, I would like to see it the sooner the better, if it's a stipend level position, and if it blossoms into a full-time part of our curriculum, fantastic. But sometimes you have to walk before you leap. If we look back on the history of our cable support, we've had some problems from our cable access channel for the schools getting good information. We no longer have the screen bringing information home to the families. So through cooperation of our administration and the cable committee, they've come up with this new approach. I'm looking forward to it because, here we are this year. We do have the cable access camera crew are the ones that now come in and do our meeting. So we no longer have an anticipation of lost soundtracks, videos of unacceptable or unexpected conversations. So we're making improvements. Let's look forward to creating this position as we walk and see what level of interest there is with the high schoolers.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Silver.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move on. H on the action agenda, the ethics declaration. Dr. Dorrigan?
Thank you. You had before you not too long ago the ethics declaration. I'm now asking that you consider taking it up for a vote. It's important that I declare that my duties require me to participate in a particular matter, and that I may not participate because of a financial interest that I'm disclosing here. I request a determination from my appointing authority, which is the school committee, about how I should proceed. As you're aware, my daughter is an employee in the school district. Part of my job function is to sign the payroll. So I'm asking you now to take up this particular matter and to decide whether you want me to continue to sign the payroll or not. I can assure you that my daughter has no involvement in putting the payroll together. We have 2 other employees who are responsible for that, and past practice has always been that a superintendent signs the payroll, which includes his or her own salary too as well. But I'm making that ethics declaration to you and ask that you take a vote.
And make a motion to approve the declaration.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay,
So
aye.
if I could just
Sure, Mike.
have an explanation. We didn't vote when we discussed it the last
Correct.
time? It's kind of a second reading, okay, thank you.
Well, last time,
It was
Dr.
informational
Dodgen was
last time.
acting. No.
It was an informational
Okay.
It
piece.
was informational when I looked at the tape.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is superintendent's goals.
Thank you. You have in your packet page 3 of what is the end of cycle summative evaluation report. But also placed before you is a folder. The folder, it's a 2-pocket folder, and it has Westport Community Schools and its logo. And I thought that providing you with the folder would include all of the documentation that we may need to talk about this evening, as well as then you may be able to reference down the road. So in that packet, ultimately, you'll find there is the guide to the rubrics and the model rubrics for superintendent. And so as we go through the evaluation this evening and goals that I'll propose before you, there are 4 particular standards. There are standards for our teachers, there are standards for our principals, and there are standards for a superintendent. And so this basically is the scoring guide, or the tool, if you will, that you'll use to evaluate me as your acting superintendent, each of the 4 standards. So that's there for you for further reference down the road. Also in your packet, you'll find a couple of singleton sheets. You'll first and foremost find a yellow sheet, and the yellow sheet is called a running record of evidence. That's aligned to the standards and indicators of effective administrative leadership. Our principals use this for the teachers. I use this for the principals, and I'm sharing it with you in case you would like to use this for me. This basically is any time that we're together and you observe me in the course of my duties, you can make notation here for your personal purpose, so that when it comes time for our summative evaluation meeting, you have some record, some evidence that you've observed that we could discuss. I will keep a sheet very, very similar to document how I feel I'm meeting the standards as well. This is available on the Department of Ed website electronically too as well. But it's a nice way just for you to keep a record of how I'm meeting the standards, as well as for me to show some documentation too as well, other than just the portfolio that perhaps has been presented in the past. Some of our teachers like putting together a portfolio, others just prefer to use the evidence sheet. I probably will share a combination to you, and that way those that want to scan through a booklet through each of the documents may be able to do so, and others just have the running list. And so it really depends on what type of learner you are. The next one is an observation evidence collection tool. Again, it's on the pink sheet. I share this with you because as our principals evaluate our teachers, and as I evaluate the principals, if I see something that's good that's happening, I'll make notation and give feedback. If I see something that warrants perhaps some attention, again, this observation evidence collection tool is provided to give feedback. So it isn't, the purpose of the evaluation is not a gotcha. It's not to try to go in and catch everything that's wrong, but ultimately to grow and to improve. So I share that with you, and I would welcome any opportunity that you may want to provide and give me feedback. The next singleton sheet, the white piece of paper, is what I submitted to Dr. Colley on September 30th. I was the assistant superintendent at the time, and per the regulation, I needed to provide a professional practice goal as well as a student growth goal. The professional practice goal I decided to keep as part of my superintendent goal, which I'll share with you in a moment. The student growth goal is still a personal goal of mine, and I will still continue to work on improving student achievement. However, my contract allows me to stay as your superintendent until June 30th of 2014. MCAS results will not be available prior to that point in time. So providing such a student growth goal to you, we would not have the results in time for you to evaluate me this school year. But I want you to be assured that this student growth goal is still a very important goal that I had started and that I will continue to address. So now I ask that you take out the next packet. However, you have in your school committee packet, and the folks at home have page 3 of this packet. It's up on our website already. This is the end of cycle summative evaluation report form that is used by the Department of Ed at the end of the cycle to evaluate the superintendent. I decided that I'd write my goals right inside this document to make it easier so that everybody is aware of the tool and that the goals are already incorporated there, because June will be here before we know it. So you'll see in step 1, there's an assessment working towards progress of the goals. And in a moment, I'll share my professional practice goal, my student learning goal, as well as goals that I've tried to align to the district improvement goals plan, or goals that I would like to achieve while I'm your superintendent. You'll also then see the 4 standards listed. Standard 1 is under instructional leadership. Standard 2 is management and operations. Standard 3 is family and community engagement. And Standard 4 is professional culture. So within these 4 standards, you have the rubric on, you would use that rubric to evaluate me on how I'm meeting each one of those 4 standards. If you flip to the next page, not only will you need to evaluate me on my goals, you'll also need to evaluate me on the standards, and then ultimately you'll need to give me an overall performance rating. These ratings get reported to the Department of Education at the end of the school year. So we need to have a rating established. Last year, I think they allowed us to do it by July 20th, but the evaluations had to be completed by the end of the school year. It was just the department gave us a couple of weeks to upload that. So again, you're going to evaluate me on my goals, you're going to evaluate me on the 4 standards, and then ultimately there'll be an overall rating given. There's an opportunity here under step 5 just for comments to be added to as well. If you turn over now to page 3, this is where I've listed my goals. One of the first priorities that I needed to tackle was starting to prepare the FY15 budget. So my goal is by 2014, by April, so in order to prepare for town meeting, I, along with the school business official, will assist you in improving our budget communication process through the creation of an informational FY15 school budget report that can be published prior to the annual town meeting. My student, and that's a personal goal, so doing some self-assessment, which is part of the 5-cycle process. You first look at areas that you're strong in. You look at areas that perhaps you need additional assistance and support and you'd like to grow and improve. Since I've not worked with you on developing the budget, I thought this would be a really good start, a good opportunity for me to prepare a nice FY15 school budget report. A student learning goal, as I said, I still will continue to work on improving student achievement. However, in the position for the next 6 months or so, I feel I need to address much more processes because our time is so short together. We know that by regulation, by June of 2014, I need to report to the Department of Ed 2 district-determined measures per teacher. We're still quite in the middle of that. We're nowhere near completion. We're piloting them, five of them right now, but the expectation is we have 2 per teacher developed and we report it to the Department of Ed in June. So my goal is to have each educator have a DDM in place for next school year, which is an authentic measure of student learning. Each DDM will be meaningful and a useful measure of student learning apart from its evaluative purpose. So through my self-assessment, through my reflection, these are the 2 goals that I feel I would like to address and work on, and will feel really, really good that if I leave you in June 2014 as your superintendent, we'll have some good processes in place. I then started to look at the district strategic plan, the district improvement plan, as well as our school improvement plans, and I came up with 3 additional goals. During the course of this school year, all members of the Westport Community Schools community will collaborate to review, revise, and implement a new district improvement plan. So we'd like to rewrite, revisit a new district improvement plan. I'd also like to, as I said, as assistant superintendent, one of my personal goals was to develop the technology planning committee. I'd like parents, staff, and students to be able to be part of that committee to look at the technology needs in our district. So by June, I, along with this committee, will review our acceptable use policy. We're actually right now considering a responsible use policy instead of acceptable. The technology plan needs to be addressed, as well as the technology budget. The committee will make recommendations to me, as well as to the school committee, and minutes will be kept and shall serve as evidence of the completion of this goal. And then the final goal that I'd like to address in the next 6 months, well, that I'll provide leadership for the district to enhance communication with the general public about positive activities, programs, accomplishments, and district improvements to increase community awareness and understanding. I will enhance the superintendent's section of the website to provide greater communication on the district leadership, as well as embedded tools to enhance greater communication with the stakeholders of our schools. I plan to initiate a new website, which will be deployed by 2014, and other benchmarks will include newsletters, work products, surveys, etc. So those are the goals that I present before you. Continuing on in your packet then, you will see where you would then ultimately rate me on those 4 standards. again, I focus much more on processes. We have in our school improvement plans, raising student achievement. I assure you, we're continuing to address that. But as I said, I will feel that by June of 2014, we'll have a lot of processes in place so that we can then address with either me as your superintendent or another superintendent, ultimately looking at raising the MCAS scores or PARC, whatever comes.
Any comments, anyone?
I have a question.
Carolina?
Just going back in
And
time,
Michael.
the way we did this the last time, I know that we went extensively through the standards and discussed the ones that we each individually were looking to have you focus on, because there's so many of them. And I'm not seeing that here, I'm not seeing, and maybe that's because we need to do that, and we need to have that discussion. And we circled them, and then we made a list of which standard, under instructional leadership, under management, which are the things that we wanted focusing on.
We did that with the teachers our first year. We highlighted 12 of the 33 indicators, and ultimately, as the Educator Labor Management Committee came back together again, all of them are important standards, and so we decided the regulation really doesn't say just take some out, but you absolutely can highlight those that are important, and I would welcome that feedback. So those that are important to you, you can certainly let me know, and I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, to that point, and then Michael, to that point, yeah, that, whatever they were called,
These things.
60,000, yeah. So
Right.
The indicators.
Yeah, we spent a few nights, I believe, huh,
Yeah.
going on.
We did,
It's crazy.
It was recommended by
Yeah.
NASC.
right.
No, I
That we
know,
not,
it's,
that we not focus on all of them, that we highlight some of them, because there's no way that we would be able to really evaluate on all of these factors. So to like pick and choose the ones that we individually thought, and then to winnow them down to a manageable source. I mean, it's kind of like an audit. You pick and choose things to audit, because you can't look at every document in the file cabinet. It's impossible. There's not enough time in the day.
I didn't like it then, I still don't like it now. Michael?
Yeah, and thank you for preparing this as the first step, second step. I see many of the points on the entry plan that you shared with us pretty much your first evening have been carried into this process. You've also indicated that there's some uniqueness in that you have a current plan as the curriculum director, and you're continuing as our curriculum director, although you're also wearing the hat of the superintendent. So I'm understanding this brings some of those goals that you'll continue to emphasize from the curriculum department as the superintendent who's handling curriculum as well. That being said, a couple of footnotes. One is we had an alternate schedule for the superintendent, although I think that's the only position that our evaluation cycle was later, and
Because of our
you haven't followed that schedule. So I would consider that as we're discussing this, we recognize somehow that some of the goals that are within this that are purely superintendent goals, and perhaps the one I'm going to suggest, which is tied to student learning, are tied to the MCAS scores and therefore need to be evaluated at a later date. So I'm a little unclear on what the best date is for this. Secondly, I do have some discussion on the student learning goal in particular. I feel that as the description provides, to me that is somewhat of a keystone for a goal. That's your choice in terms of how to implement certain aspects of reaching the overlying goal. And I just wonder if simplifying the overlying goal, something similar to that each school will receive the Massachusetts DESE improved target related to district, in other words, that's the goal that I see. Currently, the Mass DESE keystone for improved target is related to the MCAS scores, and they come out with what they'd like to see. Now, that's an achievable goal. Is it achievable by June? No, because we're not going to have our MCAS scores, but I'd still like to see that the driving force in many other decisions, like what we've listed here as the student learning goal. To me, that supports reaching that overlying goal. So those are my two thoughts. One, the schedule. Two is an additional goal that I'm suggesting.
Carolina, then Michelle.
Pursuant to the contract that's been executed, there's a timeline in March where we need to have evaluated you. And a lot of your goals are June. So I'm having difficulty trying to figure out what exactly it is that you think we should be evaluating you by March so that we can make a determination as to whether you're going to move forward or not. March is a very short timeline. That's 3 months. And I'm just not seeing anything here. And even your budget is in April. It's not even in March. So.
My contract is till June of 2014. I know that you need to make a decision on or before March 1st. However, teachers are either on a 1-year or a 2-year plan, and ultimately there's what's called a formative assessment meeting. So a teacher who's on a 1-year plan writes a year-long goal, and then there's a meeting and there's conversation in January to say, how are you doing on your goal? I haven't seen any evidence of family and community engagement. Do you have any evidence that you're working towards that standard? Teachers who are on a 2-year cycle, so those are primarily our teachers with professional status that there are no concerns with. That meeting, the formative meeting, takes place in May or June of their first year, and then the formative ultimately takes place the following June. So I can come before you in February and give you an update. That's very often what superintendents do. You don't want to start a goal process early on in the school year and then not revisit it anyway. I would appreciate some timely feedback. So absolutely, I can bring this back to you in February and give you some updates on where I'm at.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking for some more meat to be able to evaluate in this 3-month process. It's 3 months is a very short period of time. So it's sort of, what are the goals that you have within that 3-month period so that we can, at least I can make a determination whether I think that you're wearing the superintendent's hat and not just the curriculum person and then, oh, by the way, I happen to be the superintendent. That's my concern.
Michelle? And then Melissa.
2 things. I guess I was sort of feeling like we would be taking some of this and also seeing where you're at in this process, because we are obviously in a condensed process in general. And also just from other general observations and things that we discussed, I think is where I was going to be looking in March. But beyond that, I even though you've referenced May a couple of times, or the end of the contract, I would still like to see some more specifics on what the goals may be if you were still here in September or beyond. And in addition, I feel like, and as a parent who just went through the college process, as a district, I feel like we've put a lot of emphasis on MCAS testing in Park coming at us. And while it is good at evaluating how well our teachers are getting the information across to our students, it doesn't necessarily, and it doesn't in any way, shape, or form help our students get into better schools when they leave here. Their MCAS scores don't matter to colleges. I would also like to see, and this is something that we really haven't addressed in the past, I'd like to see some focus put on improving our scores that do matter, like SATs, perhaps ACTs. I know we had a group of students take the ACTs over the last year. Also addressing our dropout rates. In addressing all of this, and I know that it's happening at the high school, they're starting to look more at the elementary school, at what is happening at the elementary school that's affecting our dropout or our success rate at our high school. So that's something that can be looked at through the entire length of the district, and it's ultimately going to affect that end line when they cross the finish line. I really would like to see some focus put on that. Our AP scoring. While it doesn't necessarily get our students into a good school, it helps. But our SAT scores are definitely a cutoff for many of our students, and I'd like to see some focus put on that. But I add the AP in there because it's a different type of testing. It is, the SAT scores are more like the MCAS, whereas the APs are more, the thought process is just different in what goes into that kind of testing. And I think we need to have students that are good at both in order to be successful. So, there is some educational components in here, but I would like to see us kind of come off the MCAS a little bit. I mean, not off, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But still focus on the other things too that are going to make our students successful when they leave here. Our SAT scores might be helped. I know they're holding some of our students back, and I'd like to put some focus in there, and I think that's a great goal for a superintendent to see what we can do.
And I agree with you. And those are good goals, if you started the superintendency in July,
Sure.
that you could put systems in
I
place.
understand.
But just so you know, the behind-the-scenes work,
Mhm.
I had an opportunity to meet with the Education Foundation this week. We are looking to get support from them for the MIMSI grant so that we can send more teachers to AP training, have AP physics next year. And we just learned that one of our members in the community is willing to fund one of our art teachers to go to AP art training in March, so that we'll be able to offer another AP, but only, in the fine arts instead now too as well. So I'm starting to, behind the scenes, be able to put systems and structures in place. So those things you're mentioning are very, very important to me too as well. But those would be like
No,
next
I
year.
understand that, but I think too, part of the evaluating that Carolina is talking about is what have you done in that time frame, and things like what you just talked about are some of those things that I would be looking at, and also getting feedback from you as to, over the next year, these are my long-term goals and this is why, because it's going to help our students here, 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 here. Because ultimately that's our job, is to make sure that we graduate successful students. And I think all of these pieces together are going to hopefully fit in nice and neat. But
It's just my input.
So I'd like to say first, thank you for putting that folder together and for providing us with some organizational tools that we can utilize as we get closer to the process. I think that it will be very helpful to do that, so thank you for doing that. I also like the goals that you've listed, because I think that they're focused and they're measurable goals. They're specific. I think in regards to March, these are goals that in my mind you'd be able to talk about and say, this is where I am. We're looking at a window of 6 months. So, creating a time, in my mind, I create timelines. So in 3 months, you should be, sort of halfway there, and then you can talk about why you're halfway there or not, and what that's kind of meant. I also think that some of the things that Michelle mentioned are very important. And in my mind, you mentioned about doing the district improvement plan, moving forward from 2014 to 2017. I think just in my observations, some of those things you're mentioning are a little bit different, which is a good thing, because we've been so MCAS focused, and we're saying, okay, well, MCAS, so good for the district, but we need to look at how can we make successful students. So maybe by putting that in our district improvement plan, we'll be able to see that and then continue to improve upon that. So as you're doing that district improvement, I think we'll hopefully be able to see some of those things in there. And then that will also come into play, I would imagine, when you do your goals long-term past June. So thank you.
Just to get back to the goal I suggested was certainly a very condensed version and could be wordsmithed, but it focuses on what I do see as a longer range goal than between now and June. And I'll repeat that by making progress in the DESE measures, the improvement target, what that's saying is we are dealing with the MCAS because that's how DESE rates level schools. We are a level 2 district. I am looking forward to becoming a level 1 district. Who do I have that conversation with? Well, certainly fellow school committee members, and I believe to consider that as the primary goal for a superintendent. The steps in the keystones to measuring that would start to look at why DSE rates us at at a level 2 district, and that gets into the specifics of certain populations at the middle school and elementary school, and not quite meeting their improvement targets. And that, a lot of the goals as stated here are supporting that initiative, but I think we need to come out and include that as what our goal is for a superintendent. And, we have our superintendent here now, and I believe that goal can be measured in May in terms of what have we done to reach that goal. I don't think the measure is, okay, let's wait for the MCAS. The measure is the activities to reach that goal, whether it be reading specialists, things that we've done in the past. And I'd like to see that continue, and it's a good time to address it.
Anyone else? Let me just say, as far as superintendent's evaluations, as everybody here knows, going through it a couple of times, and that superintendent's rubric at a glance sheet with 5,000 measures and 5 people trying to decide out of those 5,000 measures which 10, 16, 20, 30 measures we're going to use to evaluate this poor person that sits in that seat. And to me, it's at the end of the day, every one of us has to make a decision whether or not we believe that whatever superintendent is or is not doing their job or is moving the district in the right direction. Whether that's on a single page sheet from 1 to 5 and, check off a number, or you go through this nightmare of, 50,000 rubrics, and it's very complicated. It can be very complicated. I think it does need to be simplified. The goals need to be measured. They need to be easily understood. A lot of these goals are percentage of this and that, this group, and a percent of this group is going to increase by this percentage, and after the first 5 minutes you lose everyone. And I don't know. Obviously, Dr. Dargan, it's a unique situation. I don't want to speak for her, but I imagine if Dr. Dargan had a 3-year contract currently, these goals would be a little bit different. I would guess. So I think we need to keep that in mind. You guys have made some good suggestions, and Dr. Dargan has heard you. I don't know. Kelly?
Yeah, there's one piece that I definitely think that I want to have some focus and goals regarding the recruitment and hiring strategies. I have some concerns about some decisions that have been made with regards to levels that people have been brought in on, extension of contracts for timeframes that don't seem to have been the norm. And so I don't understand your recruitment and hiring strategies exactly. You're new, but you have had some people come on board, and so I'd like to get some more feedback on that, what it is that you're looking at when you're making these decisions, because I have some concerns.
And I would invite each one of you to come in individually if you'd like and meet with me and share specifically the indicators that you would like to see me address or that you have concerns with too as well. So I encourage and invite each one of you individually to come in and meet with me to discuss this further in detail.
So, I noticed that this is on the action agenda. So, my question is approving the superintendent's goals, if that was to go down that road, would it be the 5 goals that were mentioned as well as the 5,000 other ones? Or do we then, would we utilize the ones that were already selected, or would it just be those 5 and maybe add an addendum to address Michael's concerns?
Yeah, everything you just said,
Anything?
all of the above, yes. I mean, it really is up to you or us.
To decide.
I mean, Dr. Duggan has suggested these goals. We can add 50 goals to it, or take them as they are, or we can tweak them.
We can, yeah, and I'll add to that.
We certainly not forced to approve them tonight.
No, and I mean, it depends too on how the motion is worded. The motion could be worded to accept her goals as she presented, and then, that we will make a list of areas that we want her to focus on. So it all really depends on how you word the motion, if there was a motion to be made.
Okay.
I mean, when MASC came, Glenn was pretty clear on saying that this is a lot to evaluate when you take a look at the student rubric at a glance, which is, I mean, there's a lot of indicators here, and looking at the indicators, you may look at it and see that she does very well in particular indicators, and then other indicators might stand out, like Carolina suggested, that she feels like she needs a little bit more info on, or emphasis on, and that sort of goes back to what you said about having your weaker areas and then your stronger areas. So the purpose of this is to identify the stronger areas and identify the weaker areas and help boost the weaker areas, and also, maybe give another kick to the stronger areas. So that's, I think, what the intention of the mass on creation of this was, to help really break down what you can look at when you evaluate a superintendent or anybody, because the teachers use the same thing.
And just if I could just pour another 2 cents into this conversation. This, Melissa, you have gone through the process.
I think I sat
A
in
little
that
bit.
seat painfully when you guys were
It is.
going
It's
through
very
it.
painful. It is excruciatingly painful. These are guides. If you read the whole DESI, whatever, the last sentence is, it's basically up to the school committee. I mean, we can evaluate Dr. Dargan whatever way we see fit, any superintendent. And these are just suggestions and, things that people put on here that we should or should not consider. I mean, a lot of these, I'm sure some of these rubrics could be, we could already associate with some of her goals now. And again, it's all, what's important to one is not necessarily, important to another. And so, I mean,
So are we
we
going to
go through this.
Are we going?
I don't want to go through. I don't want to do that again. It's crazy.
That's what I'm
That whole
asking. What are we
process.
doing?
For people out there in TV land, and I don't mean that in a bad way, evaluating the superintendent, the way state suggests that it's done, is crazy. It's nothing that anyone would want to go through. If we had to evaluate all our teachers the way we do the superintendent,
We
to
do
the extent,
evaluate them
well,
that
to the,
way.
but the
Not publicly. but
difference,
they
yes,
do.
the difference is
They
it's
go
not
through the
public.
rubrics.
No one would ever want to be a teacher. I mean, because, it's.
But they
it's-
use the same thing.
I know, but you just heard Dr. Dargan
But it's
say
not
that
public.
the rubrics, they realized it was just too much, so And again, these are
No,
just
but you're still using the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
They
she's
use
Yeah,
them.
but not pointing out individual goals. They just, I mean, it's all important. It's, it's all important. Yes, Mr. Sullivan. And we need to move on, by the way.
The first thing that we've all spent quite a bit of time, and I think, as you're alluding to, is the legislation that was drafted on this new evaluation system. Talks about having 20 indicators, it talks about multiple of requirements, and I see that those are represented in what's before us now. Most importantly, in reviewing the guidebook that they put together for superintendent evaluation, it's a 2-year cycle. So here we're having a conversation that's cognizant of the nature of our interim superintendent and whether or not we should have goals that are within that 2-year cycle, blind to the potential contract negotiations that are before us. And I believe we should be blind to that. I think we should be looking at our 2-year evaluation process of the superintendent and her particular evaluation, which will come in June because we haven't adjusted any dates of it, will be focused on the efforts within those 20 required indicators, but we'll decide where to put the emphasis. And what I'm hearing is there's time for additional feedback on where we'll be looking individually as indicators and possibly as a group. But I do think we have to establish goals. And what's before us now, I've only mentioned that the one that I'd like to see a statement made about reaching a level 1 district. And many of the goals, as listed, relate to that. And so perhaps an overarching goal, and then the keystones may be some of the goals that are listed.
Okay, Michael, with that said, you want
I'll make a
to,
motion
is Dr.
to,
Dogg to change that? You want to add that as one of her goals?
before I make the motion, I'd like to ask Dr. Dargan if I've explained my comprehension of the system, being new to all of us, and if in fact the goal of making improvements that eventually would lead to that level 1 district is something we can measure.
Well, ultimately, you can measure it each year when the annual report card comes out from the state, and the state rates each individual school as well as the district overall. I strive to be a level 1 district. I'm very, very competitive. Are we going to be there at the end of this school year? Probably not. But ultimately, given a period of time, I think some of the adjustments that we have started to make, such as the wind block at the elementary school, such as response to intervention, our RTI program, etc., we will be there, and that's what I strive for. So I have no problem if you want to add that to a goal. However, I can tell you, I'm not sure if we're going to reach that this year, but I strive for that.
And that's why, as I worded it, it was the improvement towards that level, not quite reaching it, but making progress towards that. Is
Dr. Dogg, and that designation has come about by what's
It's a
what do they use? It's
combination
the
of factors.
the
It
percentage.
looks at attendance, it looks at the high school, it looks at your graduation rate, it looks at your MCAS scores, it looks at your dropout. So there's a convoluted formula. It looks at, we had No Child Left Behind, which said by 2014 all students would be at or above proficiency. We've gotten a waiver, Massachusetts got a waiver that now says by 2017 you have to cut your benchmark at least in half. So ultimately they're using your performance and your progress index to ultimately rate you. A level 3 district is you're at 20% of the bottom. Ultimately, a level 2 district is you are in the top 80%. But we ultimately aren't at the very top, the top 10%, and ultimately that's what I strive for.
Is that what a level 1 is?
A
Is the
level
top
1
10?
is the top 10. They also have, the commissioner has commendation schools, and that's another special rating, and that's, like the top 2% schools or districts in the Commonwealth.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the goals as presented, but adding striving towards becoming a level 1 district to to under district improvement, either incorporating in one of the goals or separately.
That's a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Can you repeat that second part
be-
again?
Because the discussion I'd like to ask for is
Well, let it-
Clarification.
Yeah, Melissa, go ahead and just
So-
clarify your motion.
So it was to accept the goals as presented by Dr. Dargan, but adding to the district improvement goals, striving towards becoming a level 1 district. And that's based on Michael's feedback. So if that's not what you were looking, you wanted it worded differently, then we can do that. That's what I got out of what you were saying, that you want us to be striving towards a level 1 district.
And while that was the
Answer my question,
emphasis,
sorry.
it was the emphasis of my presentation, the term that I thought, to summarize it, and perhaps we can get some input from the superintendent, is we have some improvement targets that might not necessarily put us at a district, at a level 1, but we're meeting, if we start to meet one of the 2 improvement targets, or 2 of the 4, that's progress. So I just wonder if, to me, that's a way to measure the progress towards becoming the district, the level 1 district. And so my question would be to the superintendent, if I could, would it make more sense to include the addition of that, that each school will receive the DSE improvement target as a goal?
Instead of the superintendent?
No, it's the superintendent's goal to make that happen and to
school.
determine where the resources might be best placed and coming to us with that information. But to me, that's the ultimate goal, so.
So that's a little different than being a level 1 district. So we're looking then at the CPI, that's the Critical Performance Index, in each of our schools. And that would mean that what the state has proposed, cutting down the number of kids who are getting to advanced and proficient by 2017. So no longer are we being compared to other communities, but we have a target. And each year, this Department of Ed measures us on, did each school meet its target? So that, we're talking 2 separate goals at this point in time, but each school. Now, Macomber doesn't get, because they don't administer, so we'd be talking in 3 of our schools, but that absolutely could be a goal too.
Anything else anybody want to add to that?
Did you want to amend that?
So if I could amend the motion, if you could read the motion.
Motion is to accept the goals as presented and to add to the district improvement goals, striving for level 1. Level 1 district.
So as I decide on how to ask for an amendment, is there an area called district improvement, or should it be student learning for the improvement targets?
There is district improvement.
It's either or, it's your call. Typically, the professional practice goal and the student growth goal is brought before either to their evaluator as a goal that's mutually then decided upon based on the self-assessment The district improvement goals are goals that, typically we would say, I need you to work or want you to work in this area. So we could put it under district improvement goals.
Okay, so that piece makes sense, and the end of the motion, I'd like to include each schools will receive DESE improvement target as
So you're asking Melissa to amend her motion, Mike, or you're making an amendment to the motion?
He's asking, I'll.
I'm asking for a friendly amendment if
Yep,
that's...
I'll accept it.
All right, Michelle?
Dr. Dargan, I have a question. And I'm not at all opposed to any type of goal that's going to help us reach our goals as a district, ultimately giving us better students, better learners. My question, though, is a specific goal like that, because that is kind of specific considering we're in December. I think you know where I'm.
It would be impossible for me to say for certainty I would be successful in this goal, because the building principals have already
Set their plans.
goals. The assistant principals have already set their goals. So at this point in time, my goal is their goal. And so ultimately, they have gotten, a little bit more specific. I can tell you one administrator's goals is, I'm going to learn the new evaluation system, and I'm going to evaluate all of the teachers this year using that new instrument tool. So by June, I don't feel confident that I would be successful in this goal. A year and a half from now, absolutely hold my hands accountable. But first, which is why I presented to you more procedure and processes goals, products, tangible things that I know I personally can accomplish between now and June.
So even going beyond that, and I will add to it and just say, personally, if we're going to add goals to what you've presented, that you're pretty much telling us, we're halfway through the year, it's going to be very difficult to, at this point, set things in place to achieve this for this year, then should we also be looking at some of the things that I had also mentioned, or even MCAS, or I don't know, and I'm just throwing that out there. Is that any different than maybe putting very specific SAT achievement? Even though, and then I'll go one step further and say, we don't always create goals that we expect to achieve, because, it's like that old saying, reach for the stars and, you'll maybe land on the moon. I mean, you're better off than, you reach for the star, reach bigger, and you'll land somewhere in the middle. So we don't always set goals that we're going to, put forward and say, we are going to achieve this. Sometimes our goals may be lofty or unachievable, but if we're working towards them and striving towards them and putting things in place to help us create that, then we'll be better off, and eventually we'll get there. So I guess my question to the committee is, do we add goals that she is saying, you know what, I can't achieve those now, and if we do, then maybe we add some others, or don't we? And I guess that's my question.
And that's what I've been thinking.
I think I can answer
Go ahead, Michael.
with the intent of the motion, if that's what we're looking for clarification on. See, and what you said is very relative. If it's a lofty goal, does it belong as a goal? And I would certainly present that yes, it does.
I agree.
And I thought you agreed. So the fact is, if that goal is listed, then the initial process of evaluating administrators, when we're going over the formative assessments, I can anticipate that these district improvement targets are going to become part of that conversation, regardless of if they're in the sense of the goals that are agreed to, but how they relate to the improvement targets, which are are there. This is not a new goal. This is something I felt needed to be a written goal because perhaps it's overlooked as we've had these conversations over the years because it's a goal that's out there. That, I think, belongs in black and white in the evaluation
I know
process.
Melissa had her hand up. Can I respond, though, because it was kind of addressed to me? I know.
Sure, sure.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure she would want you to.
My question, though, Michael, was kind of more along the lines of if we do, and I agree with you, lofty goals are good. I don't have a problem with them. My question is more along the lines of if we are going to do that, then do we also include some other lofty goals that aren't just MCAS driven? And that's more, I guess, where I was getting at. That's all.
So, my thoughts with adding that was that I mean, if you could reach that goal, that'd be great, but my thoughts were that it was more striving towards. So what are you putting in place now that is going to move us into that direction? And that's why, to me, I think that it's already in there. I don't even think we necessarily have to add it. I know that Michael wants to because I can understand why. So I didn't have an issue because I feel like if you do the things that are listed in here, you are striving towards doing that. So do I expect it? No. I would be surprised because you have such a short window. So my thoughts are, is you're going to come back, you're going to explain all these things, and then you're going to go a little, maybe one step further and say, this is how it's getting us to that level 1 district. And I think that the question in regards to about the SATs and all that, when Dr. Doggan comes back and talks about the district improvement plan, I would imagine that because she's heard from school committee members that's going to be in that district improvement plan, and you're going to be able to see that indeed we are moving towards those directions. So I feel that the things that you're doing are going to show us you've touched upon these things, so it's going to be in there, and especially now that you're hearing the direction that we're looking at, it's also going to be included in how you present that to us. So that's why I was thinking that it was okay to add it. If that makes sense.
Dr. Dargan, how is this any different than the addition to the motion that Michael had required, the DESE part, or the level 1 district? How is that any different, or how is that going to appear any different in the district improvement plan than, say, some of the other? Because to me, this is kind of the same thing. It's just being put in,
Even
added,
more specific.
Right. Does that make sense?
Well, I think, ultimately, one of our goals in that district improvement plan will now say, our vision is to be a level 1
Sure.
district. So you'll now
If it
see
doesn't say that now.
in the district
I would hope it
improvement
says that
plan.
now.
And then all of the steps.
Maybe that's our problem.
How we're going to prove
just
or how
solved
we're
it.
going to show that we're a level 1 district.
So it's the same. The addition, that additional piece is pretty much the same as some of the other stuff. It's just something different that we can assess and look at.
Michael?
I just think a short footnote is for us to remember, as we're assessing goal attainment, we have do not meet, some progress, significant progress, we met the goal, we exceeded goal. So there's a range when we come to the evaluation piece, and by adding it, in many ways it's a statement. As I opened with this thought, I see it as a far-reaching umbrella goal for many of what else is listed.
Okay.
I think it.
So, Monet, do you have the final motion? Has it been?
I love her name.
I do so.
I'm
Good.
sorry.
So it hasn't changed, or could you just read the last motion that you have?
I have the partial, I don't have the full amendment.
All right, Mike, so,
So if you can read the partial.
I have to motion to accept the goals as presented to add to the district improvement goals, striving to reach a status of level 1 district. Then we can amend to include that schools receive.
you started talking about the
Okay,
individual
so
schools.
striving to reach level 1. Striving is an important term. I'm glad someone said that. And then adding to that, by each school receiving the DESE
By meeting the
by
target
meeting
goal.
the improvement target.
Is everybody happy with that? So we have a motion and a friendly amendment and a second. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. All right, folks. It's going on 8:30 and we have an executive, remember. Routine matters. Approval of minutes of Wednesday, October 16, 2013.
So moved.
Second? I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of minutes of Wednesday, October 23rd, 2013.
So moved.
Second? Discussion?
Who seconded?
I did.
Oh.
You guys are all sleeping. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
C, approval of minutes of Wednesday, December 4th, 2013.
I have questions.
Yes.
Page 2.
Hold on.
The very top.
Mhm.
This was part of the informational agenda.
December 4th, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
The high school will be updated first. I'm concerned with the statement that says that because I don't think we voted on whether we were doing this or not. It's an expensive item that I think we would need to
Where is it?
Hold
chime
on.
in on.
Where are you again, Caroline?
Page 2,
Yeah.
very top, based on recommendation of the school brains, and then I think there's other systems out there that
Oh,
I think we should get a
Second line.
presentation. I just want to make sure that we need to vote on this, right? It says will be updated. I'm concerned about the word will, which to me means it's happening.
Talking about the new reporting,
Yes. When did we decide that? A $30,000 system? We didn't vote on that. We have to shift monies to do that. It wasn't in the budget.
That was talked about. I asked about the money, and it was said that
Right, but it was in the
budget.
informational agenda. It wasn't an
There was
action
no,
agenda.
there was no vote for it.
Right,
that's what she's saying.
So why does it have to be voted on?
because it's a $30,000 purchase that wasn't in the 2014 budget that I think we as a school committee need to make decisions on.
Well, it was brought to the committee. They indicated, I was well aware, right in front of them, that was going to happen.
that it was going to happen,
There was never anything that, no, wait, this needs to go before, which I would think if it was, that it would have been mentioned then.
It was on the informational agenda. It was information being provided. It wasn't, I purchased it. I mean,
That-
here we
that
go
question was-
again.
that question
Purchasing things
was
without
specifically
approval.
asked.
Wow.
yeah.
A
Okay,
$30,000
Michael?
item?
Michael?
We've never done that. It's always come to us for a vote when we've made those kind of huge shifts. It wasn't part of the budget. It wasn't in the budget. I mean, we're not talking $2,000 here. We're talking $30,000 plus dollars. Wow.
Michael?
I want to keep the discussion from my standpoint as the way the minutes reflect the meeting. And I was under the impression during the meeting, we were getting a report that we had had a visit from a vendor, and that vendor had a system that had been recommended by the Department of Education. During that meeting, I do not recall that we had made the final decision because, in fact, we had recently had I thought the presentation was that it may be the new system versus is the new system. Now, that doesn't, so if we can agree to make that revision And then the other discussion of how we procure and source of funds for this might be worthy of adding to the new business, but I would like to get the minutes taken care of. And so my suggestion would be, based on my recollection, was that based on a recommendation from the Department of Education, they recently looked into the new student system. And that in fact it was a recommended system from the Department of Ed. I don't recall or I didn't comprehend that we had made a decision at that point.
We hadn't.
And I don't see that it's our decision, but at the meeting, I don't remember.
It's always been our decision in the
Melissa-
past.
Melissa, then Michelle.
So when all those technology things were purchased at the end of the year, those were all sought approval prior to some,
We voted on it.
okay, so I don't recall that from sitting out there. And then I do recall them saying that this was going to be purchased. And I mean, we have it on tape, so we can go back and look at it, but I do recall that because I specifically asked, we have funding for that, and the answer was provided at that point.
We didn't vote on it. We didn't authorize it. I mean, just because we talked about it doesn't mean it happens. We have to vote. That's a huge shift of monies that wasn't in the budget. This is
It's not
not,
on the agenda.
it's like, let's go buy a truck.
Point of information.
Yeah, slow down.
Wow.
Dr. Dorgan, hold on, Michelle. I know you've explained it to me in the past about the MMS, and the monies we were going to pay these guys compared to, so.
If you go to page 3, you'll see under when Mr. Noguera was here, also he gave his update, and during the course of his update, we had the conversation about upgrading to school brains, and that we would be able to consolidate eSped, the one-call system, etc. So that we did look last spring into the summer. We did, as an administrative team, look at other vendors, and ultimately this was the vendor of choice. We did explain when Mr. Noguera was here how we were going to be able to fund it. I was able to put some of the monies into the Race to the Top grant, which expires in June, to be able to purchase this system. We also have a failed system right now. If we don't do something by January 28th, the high school is going to be in a lot of trouble printing their report cards. Ultimately, the grade point average, which students need on their transcript for colleges, for acceptance, the system that we have currently is too antiquated now in order to be able to keep up with the recommendations. NEAS came in and recommended that students be evaluated on the school rubric. The MMS system cannot incorporate that into the rubric, into the report card. This new system is able to do that for us. So I thought that Mr. Noguera and I shared with you the information on this new
I know, but
system.
I know what you're talking about. Okay. All right, now Michelle's next.
I just want to, just my recollection, or at least my interpretation of our last meeting was that, yes, you had looked into school brains, but I do not recall learning from the presentation that we either had made the purchase or were going to make the purchase. I actually remember the words we are looking at. We are looking at school brains, and I don't recall it the way it's identified in the minutes.
Melissa?
If we look at the minutes, it says, I asked about the technical, is there any area in technology to move for this expense?
Where are
And
you,
then
Melissa?
Dr. Sorry.
Page 3.
And then Mr. Sullivan indicates, applauds that we are moving forward with this program. And then Carolina asks where the initial $30,000 comes from. I don't know But I interpret I remember these things, and I interpret them all to say, this is what we're doing. We're taking the money from existing systems, because it was different dollars that were identified, and rather than doing this, we're gonna put it on this, and we're gonna be in a better place, and everybody was happy. Yahoo, this is happening. That's great. I didn't hear anybody say, well, wait a minute, before you move forward, we gotta get this approved, or we need to do this.
It was
If
on the
so-
informational
so then you
agenda, not
say,
an
well,
action
Is this going to
agenda.
be
All right,
approved
okay,
since we're
Mr.
moving
Sullivan.
forward?
Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, again, I'd like to come up with a solution to
We're talking about the minutes here, guys.
the minutes. I want to remind you that Mr. Noguera was here to discuss FY15's budget, so all discussion and comments about school brains at that time was related to FY15's school budget, because he was here doing a technology update, capital plan,
That's what I thought too.
and what I saw is the FY15 budget recommendation. And that's where I saw these comments fitting. I'll look at the tape again, but, so either we pass over and look at the tape, or,
So we have a motion to pass over the minutes?
Can we pass over the minutes, because
Is that a motion?
yeah.
Is there a second?
I have a second, but I'd like to there was a few other small
Okay,
things.
sure, yeah.
On page 5,
Mhm.
second sentence from the bottom, it should be Mr. Pacheco, not Mrs. Pacheco. I think that's just a typo. And then, let me know when you're ready for the next one. Page 7, Mrs. Pacheco motions that all volunteers are to be printed, and then it said no vote taken. The motion was rescinded. I rescinded the vote.
What date are you on?
The same date,
She's on page 7.
page 7.
Yeah.
And then-
Pages on the bottom
Oh, I'm
corner.
sorry, I'm looking at last week's meeting, sorry.
That is last week's, isn't it?
No, the
The
last
the
meeting, I
previous.
went back to look at what happened with Bob. I was just looking at the previous one online.
And then on page 7 at the bottom, for the calendar, it was 410 versus 500.
Right, she voted no.
Yeah.
Can I also on page 6?
Somebody voted no for that?
Yeah, she did.
Melissa did.
For the sub?
On page 6, I
But
think
the
the date
dates
is
for the
wrong. You have July
calendars.
19th as the end of the school date. I think you meant June.
Oh,
I hope we're not going to school till July.
I'll send my kids. Right.
I'll send them till July.
Was it page 6?
Page 6E?
Mm.
Is it not page 6? Maybe it's not page, oh, yeah, it's page 6 of the action agendas. That's what I mean, it's E of the action. Maybe it's not page 6. It's page 8, I'm sorry, page 8. The very top, last
Page
day,
eight
it
of
says
nine.
July 19th. It should say June 19th.
Ooh,
7/19.
that might have helped us reaching our goals, though. Right, so it's 6/19. Any other, so we'll make those changes, and then everyone can go home and watch the video and make some popcorn, and we'll look at it in a couple of weeks. So motion made and second, all in favor to table these?
Aye.
All right, school committee business.
Can I bring something up?
Yes.
Sorry. I'm only going to bring it up now because it's under talking about correspondence. And I did mention this to Karen, Ann, but I want to also mention it to you as well. And I know at least one other member, it was you, received a, well, I'm sure we all got it, but it was still sitting there when I grabbed mine. We all received invitations to the 8th grade breakfast that was up here. And they were in a sealed envelope, so Karen didn't open them. And they were received date stamped 2 days prior, but because nobody opened them, I didn't know it was happening and that we were invited. And I'm a little disappointed because I would have liked to have gone.
Email, it was sent as an email, wasn't it? Full school committee?
There was an email.
It was an email.
But not everybody is, I mean, I can't necessarily get on everything every single day either. And at least if a physical, if something physical is sent invitation-wise, then it would be nice to also at least let Karen send out a blurb to the school committee.
That there's
because
something there.
there's, like, I checked 3 different emails, so sometimes they get
And I get and understand that, and we'll try to do a better job with that, but sometimes because the school committee mailbox is over in the West Wing side, people will put things for the school committee, sealed envelopes, and Karen just disperses them. In this particular case, I think she determined once one school committee member opened it, she had a hunch what was in every other envelope. She did highlight for me today, though, to make mention and notice that
Here's
you
one
will
you-
have one for dinner in January. It'll be a duplication of that morning's event, only it'll be a dinner instead of a morning open house.
Okay.
Yeah, we got that in the thing today.
Yeah. I didn't notice that. Hold
Yeah,
on.
but
I just
I-
wanted to mention it because I know, just for future, when those things come through, just to make sure that we cover all avenues.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, all you guys know, if you stop by the school, you should either ask Karen or at least go to the counter and see if there's anything on that counter with your name on it. All right, anything else? Next meeting?
Yes.
Yes, Carol.
This issue of this MMS program, I mean, I'm speechless. I can't even articulate how speechless I am.
Oh, you're doing a good job, actually.
You know, a $30,000 plus item, you can't just shift monies. We have to authorize those shifts.
I would like to respectfully ask that the next meeting, January 8th, be reserved solely exclusively for the budget presentation. We have every administrator who would be coming, and so I would ask that we have a lot of dedicated time to have a conversation over the budget.
And is the business person going to be here for that meeting? I would hope so,
Yes, you will.
because I've never met the man.
These
Works
Tuesdays
Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
and Wednesday.
Well,
Big,
you
tall
know,
guy.
I work in Boston, so.
All right, anything else? Okay. New business requests, comments and statements from the public. Seeing none. Motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to the WFT collective bargaining unit, not to return to open session.
Second, I, Melissa Pacheco.
I, Michael Sullivan.
Aye, Tony Veras.
I'm Michelle Duarte.
Hi, Carolina Africano.
Hey, we are adjourned.